The auctioneer had just called Bellwether Inn a structure of limited commercial appeal when Nora Bell raised her number, $500. The bid card trembled hard enough to rattle against her coat button. Across the wet lawn, her father turned from the auctioneer and stared at her as if someone had dug up the wrong body. Grant Bell's surprise lasted less than a second. Then his mouth bent into a smile. "600, he said. A few people laughed uncertainly. They were standing beneath umbrellas among rows of June Bell's belongings, lamps, quilts, casserole dishes, porch furniture, with the crumbling inn looming behind them. Rainwater dripped through one corner of its veranda roof into a blue enamel pot someone had placed beneath the leak. Nora bid 7. Her brother Cole looked at Grant. Grant gave the smallest nod. 800, Cole called. That was all the money Nora actually had. She held up her card again. The auctioneer hesitated. 900 from bidder 42. Grant knew what was in her checking account. He knew about the rent due Monday and the pickup that needed a transmission. He even knew she still loved the inn enough to ruin herself for it. 1,000, he said pleasantly. The pleasantness was the worst part. At 10 that morning, Nora had parked 2 fields away because the road around her grandmother's property was already lined with trucks. The borrowed pickup belonged to Dan Mercer, who had sold her own truck to her 4 years earlier and had been apologizing for it ever since. "I said the transmission was temperamental," he had protested when she called him the previous night. "You said it had personality. That's a temperament with cup holders." Now his truck leaned toward the passenger side and smelled like motor oil, spearmint gum, and the wet hound he claimed had never been inside it. Nora sat behind the wheel for almost a minute after turning off the engine. Through the streaked windshield, she could see the yellow auction signs tied to fence posts. Bell Estate, they said in black block letters, with arrows guiding strangers toward the lawn, where June had spent 41 years shooing people away from her peonies. Nora had received no funeral notice. She had learned about the funeral from a photograph Meredith posted online. Grant in his charcoal suit, Meredith in black, Cole holding June's old umbrella over both of them. The caption said, "Rest easy, Mom. We'll take care of everything." By then, June had been buried for 2 days. The auction notice came through Ruth Alvarez. Ruth had mailed it in a plain white envelope with no note, though she had circled the listing for Bellwether Inn 3 times in red pen. Nora got out of the truck and immediately stepped into mud deep enough to swallow the heel of her boot. "Good start," she muttered. The rain was too soft to be dramatic. It was an irritating March drizzle, the kind that settled into her hair and made every paper cup feel damp. People stood in loose groups drinking coffee and inspecting June's life on folding tables. Nora recognized more faces than she wanted to. Mr. Talbot, the retired mail carrier, lifted 2 fingers in greeting. Tessa Morgan stood beside a table of framed prints with a camera hanging against her dark green coat. Their eyes met. Tessa looked away first. That was fair. Nora had done the same thing for 3 years. Near the house, Meredith was telling a woman in a fur-trimmed raincoat that the silver tea service had been brought over from England. It had been purchased at a department store in Cincinnati. Meredith saw Nora over the woman's shoulder. Her sales smile remained in place, but the rest of her face changed. "You came. You put arrows on every road. I mean, after everything." Nora glanced at the tables. Apparently everything has lot numbers now. Meredith pressed her lips together. She was 40, elegant even in mud, with June's high cheekbones and Grant's talent for making silence feel like a disciplinary measure. "You shouldn't make today harder than it already is. I'm not planning to. Dad doesn't know you're here. He has eyes." "Nora." "I came to buy something." That gave Meredith pause. Her gaze traveled over Nora's thrift store coat, damp jeans, and boots with mud climbing the ankles. "With what?" Nora smiled. "Good to see you too." She walked away before Meredith could stop her. The registration table stood beneath a striped canopy near the old carriage barn. Nora showed her identification and accepted bidder card 42 from a cheerful man in a plastic rain poncho. "Anything in particular you've got your eye on?" he asked. "The inn." His pen stopped. He looked past her toward Bellwether, perhaps checking that they meant the same building. The main house sat on the rise above the lake, square and white and freshly washed for the sale. Bellwether Inn crouched closer to the county road. Its gray clapboards had peeled into curls. 3 veranda posts tilted at subtly different angles, like men trying not to look drunk. One gutter hung loose at the eastern corner. The brass letters over the entrance had lost the second E. So, from the road, the place announced itself as Bellwether. The registration man lowered his voice. You've walked through it? Not recently. Open house inspection was yesterday. I didn't hear about it. He gave her a careful look, the kind people used when they had stumbled upon a family matter and wanted to back out without turning around. Well, buyer assumes all repairs. Property's sold as is. She knows. Grant's voice came from behind her. Nora turned. Her father looked older than he had at Christmas 3 years ago. Not fragile. Grant would have considered fragility an accusation, but his hair had gone fully white at the temples, and the skin beneath his eyes had loosened. He wore his good brown coat and no hat, allowing the rain to bead neatly on his silver hair. For one stupid instant, Nora wanted to hug him. The body could be deeply embarrassing that way. Grant looked at her bidder card. I thought Ruth might contact you. I thought my family might. The arrangements happened quickly. So quickly there wasn't time for a phone call? His jaw shifted. Your grandmother didn't want a lot of fuss. Nora looked toward the White House. People carried June's lamps through the side door one at a time. Lucky her, she said. She missed it. Grant exhaled through his nose. Don't start. I registered for the auction. That's all. What are you planning to buy? I haven't decided. You said the inn, the cheerful man supplied. Nora closed her eyes briefly. Grant gave the man a flat stare, then turned back to her. You can't buy the inn. It's an auction. You can't afford the property taxes, much less the repairs. The boiler was condemned in January. There's water damage in the west rooms, and half the plumbing needs to come out. You sound like a terrible salesman. This is not a joke. No, jokes usually have better tense. The registration man discovered urgent work at the opposite end of the table. Grant lowered his voice. If this is some attempt to make a statement, I'm here because Grandma asked me to open the windows. The words escaped before Nora could stop them. Grant's expression went still. June had said it during one of their Thursday calls the previous summer. Her voice had been thin and breathless from carrying laundry upstairs. If that place ever stands empty, you go open the windows, honey. Houses go bad when they can't breathe. At the time, Nora told her to stop climbing stairs. June told her to stop giving orders over a telephone. Grant looked toward the inn. Your grandmother said a lot of things when she was tired. She knew my name. That's enough. There it was, the old door slamming shut. He did it without raising his voice. He had done it when Nora questioned the proposed land sale, when she refused to say June was confused, when she found her clothes packed into black trash bags on his porch after Christmas. Grant stepped closer. You embarrassed her while she was alive. Don't turn her death into another performance. Nora stared at him until his face blurred around the edges. Then Ruth Alvarez appeared beside them, carrying 3 coffees in a cardboard tray. I only bought 2, Ruth said, but the girl handed me 3, so either the Lord provides or somebody behind me is missing coffee. She offered one to Nora. Ruth was 63, short and broad-shouldered, her gray-streaked hair tied at the nape of her neck. She had worked beside June for 19 years and treated most emotional emergencies as obstacles between herself and a completed task. Grant said, Did you tell her? I tell lots of people lots of things. You mailed the notice. Ruth sipped her coffee. Then why ask? His face colored. This is a family estate. Yes, Ruth said. That's why it was strange she didn't know. Nora took the coffee. It was mostly cream, exactly how she drank it. Ruth remembered, which hurt more than it helped. Grant walked away. Ruth watched him cross the lawn, still irons his jeans. Is that bad? It shows a man with too much faith and control. Nora tried to laugh. A broken little sound came out. Ruth's eyes moved over her face. She didn't hug her. Nora was grateful. You look tired, Ruth said. You look judgmental. I am rested enough to be both. They stood under the canopy while rain ticked against the plastic roof. Nora asked, Was she alone? Not at the end. The answer struck low in her chest. Did she ask for me? Ruth looked down at her coffee. That was an answer too. Before Nora could make Ruth say it, the auctioneer tested his microphone, producing a squeal that sent everyone wincing toward the lawn. We'll talk, Ruth said. When? When your father isn't 10 feet away pretending not to listen. Grant stood near the silver table with his back to them. Ruth touched one finger to the red circle around 42 on Nora's bidder card. You serious about the inn? I brought 800. Ruth glanced at Bellwether. That might be $7.50 too much. Grandma loved it. Your grandma also loved canned asparagus. Love isn't proof of quality. Nora smiled despite herself. Then Ruth's face softened. Walk through before you do anything foolish. The auction started with tools from the carriage barn. Cole bought June's riding mower after bidding against a landscaper. Meredith acquired the silver tea service for $600 and immediately told two people it was an heirloom. Mr. Talbot bought a box containing 9 clocks, none of which worked. The rain came and went. Nora stayed near the back, waiting. She watched strangers lift June's dishes and inspect the undersides. Every object looked naked outside its usual place. The green bowl that had always held apples sat beside a crate of extension cords. June's red cardigan was folded between 2 tablecloths. Nora bid on it once, but Meredith raised the price without looking at her. Nora let it go at $90. At noon, the auctioneer announced the real estate lots. The main house went first. Grant bought it after brisk competition from a couple who wanted a lake house. The woodland went to Cole for more than Nora could imagine owing anyone. Meredith purchased the narrow garden parcel beside the house after Grant whispered something in her ear. Then came Bellwether Inn. The auctioneer read the description from his clipboard while people studied their shoes. He mentioned 7 guest rooms, but not the stained ceilings, the public footpath cutting behind the kitchen garden, or the smell the boiler made before it quit. He opened at $25,000. Nothing? $10,000? Rain dripped into the enamel pot. $5,000? Someone coughed. $1,000, the auctioneer said, his optimism visibly deteriorating. Historic hospitality property with furnishings to be offered separately. Nora thought of June opening the dining room curtains each morning, one after another, letting gold light slide across the scarred tables. $500, she called. Grant turned. Now, at $1,300, every face seemed turned toward Nora. The extra $500 would come from Dan's emergency credit line, secured against a truck she could no longer keep. Monday's rent would have to wait. So would cents. Grant raised his hand. Before the auctioneer could acknowledge him, Ruth said, "Grant, just his name." He looked around. Mr. Talbot lowered his bidder card. The diner owner folded hers in half. A couple near the veranda murmured to each other, then stepped back. One by one, the little movements traveled through the crowd until the lawn became unnaturally still. Nobody was going to help him do this. Grant's hand remained raised, but it no longer looked powerful. It looked stranded. He lowered it. The auctioneer scanned the silent crowd. 1,300 once. 1,300 twice. Nora could hear rain tapping the bottom of June's blue pot. Sold to bidder, 42. For one breath, nobody moved. Then, from somewhere behind Nora, the brass handbell rang. The sound was bright and ridiculous against the rain. Everyone turned toward Mr. Talbot, who stood beside a box of Christmas decorations, holding June's brass handbell. He lifted it apologetically. Sorry, thought the moment needed something. The auctioneer stared at him. Mr. Talbot tucked the bell behind his back. Continue. A few people laughed, and the spell broke. Coats rustled. Somebody opened an umbrella. Grant walked toward the main house without looking at Nora, while Cole followed close enough to speak into his ear. Nora remained where she was, bidder card still raised. She had bought the inn. The fact did not feel triumphant. It felt like missing a step in the dark and waiting for the floor to arrive. Ruth took the coffee from her hand before she dropped it. "I assume you have $1,300, she said. "Parts of it." "How many parts?" "1,300 very committed ones." "Nora, 800 now?" "Dan Mercer gave me a credit line against my truck." "The truck with no transmission?" "It has a transmission. It's just selective about when to use it." Ruth looked at her for several seconds. "June used to say you could make a bad decision sound like a weather report. I thought she said I was resourceful." "She said that too, usually before asking me to hide a ladder." The auctioneer moved on to the inn's contents. His assistant rolled a hand truck forward, carrying a brass bed frame from room 2, its pieces tied together with orange rope. "Lot 112, he called. Antique full-size bed, hardwood dresser, bedside table, and coordinated lamp. "We'll start at 200. No one bid. The dresser had a pale ring on top, where June kept a pitcher of fresh water. Nora knew the top drawer stuck when the air was humid, and that the lamp switch shocked anyone foolish enough to touch it barefoot. 100? Silence. $50? Nora raised card 42. The auctioneer glanced across the crowd. 50 from 42. Do I hear 60? Meredith's card was at her side. Cole had shoved his into his coat pocket. Grant stood on the White House's porch, one hand resting on the rail. He could have bid. He did not. Sold? The next lot contained 2 quilts, 4 curtain panels, and a stack of towels. Nora bought it for $20. 3 dining tables with 14 chairs went for $75. The front desk, including its wall of wooden key cubbies, cost her $50. June's mixing bowls and 2 dented stock pots cost $10. Each time the auctioneer asked for another bid, people became absorbed in their coffee, their boots, the lake below the hill. The objects nobody had hesitated to paw through that morning were left untouched. At the brass handbell, Mr. Talbot held it aloft before the auctioneer could describe it. I bid $1, Nora said. 2, Mr. Talbot replied. A murmur went through the crowd. He smiled at her. Can't let you have everything easy. $3? 4, Mr. Talbot. 5. She narrowed her eyes. 6. He nodded once, satisfied, and lowered the bell. Sold for $6 to bidder 42, the auctioneer said. Mr. Talbot carried it over and placed it in Nora's hands before anyone could tell him the sale technically had not concluded. Your grandmother used to ring that when dinner was ready, he said. I know. She rang it once when the boiler caught fire. That seems less appropriate. Got everybody downstairs. The bell was colder than Nora expected. The wooden handle had darkened where June's palm had worn the varnish smooth. Mr. Talbot glanced toward Grant. I didn't know he kept you from the funeral. Nora closed her fingers around the handle. I don't want to talk about it here. No? Course not. He shuffled back toward his 9 broken clocks. Just don't confuse what one man did with what everybody wanted. That was almost kind. Kindness had become difficult to receive without suspicion. Nora placed the bell inside the box of linens and folded a towel over it. By 3, she had spent another $253 on objects that had been included in guest room rates nobody wanted to pay. The auction company allowed her to leave the furnishings inside the building after she signed an assumption of risk form. It sounded like permission until she read it twice and understood it was a warning. At the payment table, she transferred $800 from her account and called Dan. He answered over the whine of an air wrench. You bought what? The inn. The whole inn? I don't know how to buy part of a building. You buy a condo. This isn't a condo. I gathered that from the word inn. The auction clerk watched her over the top of his glasses. Nora turned away. I need the $500. Your truck isn't worth $500. You sold it to me for $3,000. That was 4 years and a radiator ago. You said the transmission had personality. I was flirting. You were 68. I wasn't flirting well. Nora pinched the bridge of her nose. Dan, please. The humor left his voice. You sure? She looked across the yard at Bellwether. The upper west window had a crack running from one corner, and the lace curtain behind it had gone gray. The veranda steps dipped in the middle. Water continued to fall through the roof. No, she said. Dan was quiet. Then he said, That's more convincing than if you'd said yes. I'll transfer it. She thanked him and hung up before he could ask how she planned to repay him. The auction clerk slid a packet toward her. You understand this is only today's deposit. Closing costs and prorated taxes are due within 30 days. How much? When he told her, the number seemed to come from a language she had not studied. She signed anyway. Tessa waited near the striped canopy while Nora finished. Most people had moved toward the house for the jewelry and framed paintings. Without the crowd around her, Tessa looked smaller than Nora remembered, though perhaps that was because she was hunched against the rain. She lifted her camera strap over her head and tucked the camera into its bag. So, she said, you own an inn, in the same sense that a person standing under a falling piano owns a piano. Tessa almost smiled. They had once spoken in shortcuts, able to cross an entire subject with half a sentence and the correct expression. Now, every word had to be carried individually. I'm sorry about June, Tessa said. Thank you. I went to the funeral. Nora swallowed. I figured. There weren't many people. Grant said June wanted it private. He said she didn't want a fuss. Tessa looked toward the main house. She ran an inn for 41 years. The woman considered 6 kinds of jam a reasonable breakfast. She liked fuss. The laugh left Nora before she could stop it. It turned sharp at the end. Tessa reached into her coat pocket, then seemed to reconsider whatever was there. I took some pictures of Bellwether this morning, in case everything got split up. That was thoughtful. I didn't do it for you. There it was, clean and deserved. Nora nodded. Okay. Tessa's face tightened, as if she had expected an excuse and did not know what to do without one. I should help Ruth, she said. With what? Keeping you alive, probably. She walked away. Nora found Grant behind the main house arguing with Cole over where the woodland parcel ended. Cole had inherited their father's height, and none of his stillness. At 35, he remained in constant motion, checking his phone, rubbing his jaw, shifting from one expensive boot to the other, as if the ground were taking too much of his time. Grant dismissed him with, "We'll talk later." Cole looked at Nora. "Congratulations, innkeeper. Land baron, I got 16 acres. You got tetanus." He left, grinning, but his humor had an edge Nora recognized. Cole had always joked hardest when Grant's attention was elsewhere. Grant waited until he was out of earshot. "Undo it," he said. "The auction's final. Tell them you misunderstood the terms." "I didn't. You had no inspection. You don't have financing. There are liens for nothing. There's no mortgage, no hidden complication, just a building that eats money. June lost nearly $12,000 on it last year." Nora flinched at the blunt number. Grant saw it. "You didn't know that." She was sick. She was stubborn. She kept rooms open with no guests in them because people might come back. She heated the dining room all winter for 2 breakfast customers. She hired Ruth when she couldn't afford Ruth. She loved Ruth. Love isn't payroll. No, it's why people deserve payroll. His eyes hardened. "You think I wanted to sell because I hated the place? I spent every winter of my adult life fixing its pipes. I replaced that roof twice. I drove over at midnight because she heard a noise and discovered a possum in the pantry. What did you do?" "What?" "With the possum?" "I opened the door." Despite herself, Nora pictured Grant in pajamas, grimly negotiating with wildlife. His mouth twitched, then flattened again. "That building took whatever she gave it. Now it'll take everything you have. You don't have to help me. I'm not offering, I know." The hurt reached his face before he concealed it. Nora hated that she noticed. Hated even more that some part of her wanted to rescue him from a sentence he had chosen. Grant glanced toward the lawn, where Ruth and Tessa were carrying a box into the inn. "Those people made a spectacle of me. You bid against someone with $800 for a building you don't want. I was stopping you from making a mistake. You packed my clothes in trash bags." His gaze snapped back to hers. The rain ticked softly through the bare branches. "That was 3 years ago," he said. "Yes. You had called me a thief in my own house. I said you were trying to steal Grandma's choice. You're the one who heard thief. She was my mother, and she asked for me before she died." Nora did not know that for certain. She knew only the silence Ruth had given her. But Grant's face changed. Not guilt exactly. Something quick and unguarded. Then it was gone. "You don't know what the last week was like," he said. "No, you made sure of that." She left him behind the house. Ruth had unlocked Bellwether's front door. It stuck halfway, swollen by rain, until all 3 women pushed their shoulders against it. The smell met them first. Damp plaster, furniture polish, old cooking oil, and the cold mineral breath of a building without heat. Tessa flicked a switch. Nothing happened. "Electricity's off," Ruth said. "Of course it is," Nora answered. Gray daylight reached into the lobby through lace curtains. The front desk sat where it always had, waiting for the auction workers to decide whether Nora had bought it correctly. Wooden room keys hung in their cubbies. A ceramic dish beside the ledger held 3 peppermints fused into a single pink lump. Nora touched the desk's scarred edge. The inn did not feel like hers. It felt as though June had stepped into the kitchen and might return annoyed that everyone was standing around in wet coats. Ruth handed Nora a ring of keys. "Start upstairs," she said. "You need to see the west rooms before dark." Nora looked toward the windows. "First, I promised I'd do something." She crossed the lobby and strained against the brass latch. The first window resisted, then released with a wooden groan. Cold, wet air poured through the room, stirring the curtains and lifting the corner of the guest ledger. Tessa opened the second. Ruth opened the third. Somewhere above them, water struck the floor with a slow, steady tap. Nora breathed with the house for exactly 5 seconds. Then part of the upstairs ceiling fell. The crash shook dust from the lobby ceiling. Tessa grabbed Nora's sleeve before Nora could run toward the stairs. "Wait, what if somebody's up there?" Who would be up there? I don't know. An auction worker, a burglar with very low standards. Another sound came from above, softer this time, like gravel being poured onto a rug. Ruth took an umbrella from the stand beside the door. No one went upstairs. I locked the place myself. You're bringing an umbrella? Tessa asked. I know that roof. They climbed in a line, Ruth first with the umbrella open above her head. The staircase creaked but held. At the landing, water ran beneath the carpet in a thin, shining line. Room 7 stood at the end of the west hall. Its door had swollen in the frame. Ruth shoved it with her hip, and a panel of damp plaster broke loose from the ceiling just inside, hitting the floor with a heavy slap. Nora stopped behind her. A section 6 feet across had collapsed over the bed. Wet insulation lay in gray clumps across June's white coverlet. Water dripped from exposed lath, patient and steady. One corner of the ceiling sagged under a dark bulge. Tessa stared upward. We should get out. It's not the whole ceiling, Nora said. That's a fascinating standard. Nora stepped around Ruth. The room had once been June's favorite to give newlyweds because it faced the lake through 2 maple trees. Now the wallpaper peeled in long strips, and the floor near the windows felt soft beneath Nora's boot. Ruth caught the back of her coat. Don't. I'm checking the damage. You're standing under the damage. A drop hit the end of Nora's nose. She wiped it away. Where are the buckets? You don't need buckets, Tessa said. You need a roof. Until the roof comes, buckets. There are some in the laundry room, Ruth said. Tessa looked at her. You're encouraging this? No. But water isn't interested in our position. They fetched buckets, dishpans, and 2 stock pots Nora had bought for $10. The largest leak fell too close to the bed, so they pulled the mattress into the hallway. It weighed twice what it should have. It's wet, Nora said, breathless. Tessa backed through the doorway, gripping one handle. Thank you, detective. It wasn't wet when they brought it upstairs. That's generally how water damage works. They got it halfway down the hall before it folded in the middle and trapped Tessa against the wall. For the first time that day, Nora laughed without pain catching behind it. Tessa did not. Then the mattress made a deep wheezing sound, and a stream of brown water ran over Nora's boot. Tessa started laughing too. Ruth leaned against the umbrella handle, unimpressed. If you two are finished enjoying the collapse of the property, turn it sideways. They left the mattress in an empty room and continued the inspection. Room 6 smelled of mildew, but remained dry. In room 5, one window had been painted shut, and another refused to stay open. The bathroom faucet produced a cough, though the water had supposedly been turned off. A rust stain spread beneath the clawfoot tub in the shape of a continent. The eastern rooms were better. Dusty, cold, faded, but recognizable. Beds stood made beneath quilts. Wrapped drinking glasses waited on trays. June had placed a sprig of dried lavender on each pillow, as if guests might arrive before supper. Nora picked one up. The stem crumbled between her fingers. Room 2 still held the pale ring where the water pitcher had sat, though its furniture was now downstairs under her auction number. Room 1 had a cracked pane and a view of the road. The room at the front of the hall, number 3, was the only one that smelled clean. Traveling nurse stayed here until December, Ruth said. She worked nights at County General, slept with a towel pushed under the door so the breakfast smells wouldn't wake her. Nora opened the closet. 3 wire hangers clicked together. Why did she leave? Her contract ended. Did anyone else call? Plenty called. June stopped taking reservations in January. She told me she was full. Ruth looked at the floor. On their Thursday calls, June had complained about picky guests and mountains of laundry. She had described a couple from Michigan who wanted eggs cooked 2 different ways. She had asked Nora's opinion on raising the room rate by $5. Nora had believed her because believing meant June was still managing. She lied to me, Nora said. She edited. That's lying with better posture. She didn't want you worrying. She wanted me here. Ruth folded the umbrella and set it against the wall. Yes. Tessa quietly left the room. Nora watched her disappear down the hall. You said we'd talk. I did. Did Grandma ask for me at the end? Ruth rubbed her thumb along the umbrella's curved handle. The afternoon before she died, she woke up asking what day it was. I told her Wednesday. She said, then call Nora because she'll be waiting tomorrow. Nora sat on the edge of the bare bed frame. Did you call? Grant said he had. He didn't. I know that now. What did he tell her? That you were on your way. The empty hangers moved, though there was no draft. Nora pressed both palms between her knees, so she waited. She slept most of the time. That isn't what I asked. No. Ruth's voice remained level, but her eyes shone. She waited. Nora stared at the narrow crack between the floorboards. Her first feeling was not grief. It was a hot, clean desire to walk down the hill, find Grant, and make him hurt in a way he could not rename as concern. Beneath that came something worse. She thought I chose not to come. No. I told her you were coming, but I didn't. She wasn't keeping score, Nora. She always kept score. She cheated at cards. Ruth sat beside her. Their shoulders did not touch. Her last clear morning, Ruth said, she asked me to open the curtains. Then she complained about the coffee and told the nurse her shoes squeaked. She was herself. Don't let one waiting hour swallow all the others. Nora covered her mouth. Ruth looked straight ahead while Nora cried, granting her the privacy of not being observed from 12 inches away. Downstairs, the front door banged in the wind. Tessa called that she was closing the windows before the rain came in, sideways. By dusk, the power was still off, and the inn had become colder than the lawn. They left bowls beneath the active leaks and moved anything valuable away from wet walls. Valuable turned out to mean towels, quilts, and one electrical cord that had not been chewed by something. Tessa loaded Nora's auction boxes into the lobby. You shouldn't stay here tonight, she said. I have an apartment, for another hour if you don't leave. Nora checked her phone. 3 missed calls from her landlord, 2 from Dan, 1 from an unknown number that was probably the auction office discovering a new fee. I'll come back tomorrow. Ruth locked the front door, then handed the keys to Nora again. This time, Nora felt their weight. Her apartment occupied the second floor of a converted house above a tax preparer's office. The radiator clanged every 11 minutes, and the kitchen floor sloped toward the refrigerator, but it was dry. Nora sat at the little table with the auction packet, her banking app, and a yellow legal pad. She wrote $1,300 at the top. Under it, she added the furnishings, estimated closing costs, property taxes, electricity deposit, and the rent she still owed. She did not write roof. Roof was not a number. Roof was weather. Dan called again. How bad? He asked. Define bad. Use the standard definition. Part of a ceiling fell. Before or after you bought it? After. Good. You got the full experience. Nora tucked the phone between her shoulder and ear. How much does a roof cost? How long is a rope? Long enough to hang myself. That was a bad joke. Yes. Dan went quiet. I know a carpenter who worked on old houses. Ben Carver. I can't afford a carpenter. You can't afford a collapsed building either. Maybe he can look at it. That's what I said. I didn't say hire a man and hand him a blank check. Ben wouldn't take one anyway. Suspicious of optimism. Can you give him my number? I'll ask. Also, your truck's worth $800 if I'm feeling charitable. You said 5. I slept on it. It's been 4 hours. I nap efficiently. Nora smiled at the legal pad. I need it to get to work. Then don't sell it yet. I already used it as security. You used it as security with me. I'm not a bank. You charged interest. Because I'm not a charity either. After they hung up, Nora listened to the radiator strike its pipe. The sound was obnoxious and dependable. She called her landlord and persuaded him to wait until Friday. Then she opened the inn's old website on her laptop. The home page loaded one piece at a time. First the faded blue border, then a photograph of Bellwether, taken before the eastern maple split in a storm. Finally, June appeared on the veranda in a pink sweater, smiling beside the words, "Welcome home, even if you've never been here before." The reservation button led to an error page. Nora closed the laptop. Friday was 4 days away. At 7 the next morning, she returned with trash bags, rubber gloves, instant coffee, and a borrowed space heater. A pickup she did not recognize stood in front of the inn. A man was on the veranda ladder, pushing his thumb into the rotted edge of the roof. He was tall, broad through the back, with a brown work jacket and dark hair going gray near his ears. Rain from the gutter dripped onto his shoulder. He seemed not to notice. Nora got out of Dan's truck. "Are you Ben?" He looked down. "Are you the person who bought this?" "That depends. On what?" "How bad you're about to tell me it is." He pushed his thumb deeper into the wood. A piece the size of a dinner roll broke off and hit the veranda. "Bad," he said. Nora looked at the crumbled wood between her boots. "Could you be more specific? Expensively bad?" "Dan said you were suspicious of optimism." "He talks too much." Ben climbed down, wiped his hand on his jeans, and looked at the front of Bellwether for a long moment. "The good news," he said, "is it's still standing." Nora waited. That was all the good news? Nora folded her arms. "Dan usually gives me at least 2 pieces of good news before he asks for money. I'm not asking for money. That's encouraging. I'm telling you not to turn on the electricity until somebody checks the panel." She followed his gaze through the lobby window. The electrical panel occupied a cabinet behind the front desk, concealed by a frame print of sailboats. June had considered exposed utilities discouraging to guests. "What's wrong with it? Don't know yet." Then, "Why can't I turn it on?" "Because somebody wrote Sparks here on the panel." Nora unlocked the front door. Ben was right. The words had been written in black marker on a strip of masking tape beneath the main breaker. The S had faded, leaving Parks here. That could be parking information, Nora said, for very small cars. Ben took a flashlight from his jacket and examined the wiring without touching it. He did not perform concern the way Grant did. He simply looked, grunted once, and moved on. "Show me the roof damage." Upstairs, he stopped Nora at room 7's threshold. "You walked in there? Briefly? Don't do it again." Ruth said the same thing. "Listen to Ruth. You haven't met Ruth. I know her." Of course he did. Everyone seemed to possess pieces of Bellwether's history that Nora had missed. Ben crouched in the hall and pressed 2 fingers to the carpet. "Water ran this far? Yesterday. Recent leak got worse. Long-term leak underneath. How can you tell? The smell. It all smells wet. Different wet." Nora watched him pull a small knife from his pocket and ease it into the baseboard. The tip sank with almost no resistance. "Explain different wet. Recent water smells sharp. Old water smells sweet." She leaned down and sniffed. Ben glanced at her. "You don't have to. It smells like wet wood." "Congratulations. You're emotionally healthy." He checked the rooms one by one, pausing at windows, floors, and ceilings. He asked when the boiler had last worked, whether the water had been winterized, and who had repaired the porch. Nora's answers became less useful as they continued. "I don't know. June said a man from Elkhart, but that might have been the gutters." At the East Hall, Ben leaned his shoulder against the wall and surveyed the ceiling. 3 rooms could be made usable, he said. Nora blinked. Usable good or usable if you dislike your guests. Structurally dry. Room 3's closest. 1 and 2 need window work. Bathrooms need testing. What about downstairs? Kitchen first, then dining room. Lobby's ugly, not dangerous. I don't think it's ugly. You own it. You're legally required to say that. He led her outside and walked the perimeter. Beneath the eastern wall, he pointed out a cracked drain pipe that emptied against the foundation. At the rear steps, he crouched and pressed his knife into a tread. It went through. Nora looked away. "You should stop watching the knife," he said. "I feel like it's important to witness. You don't attend your own blood tests, do you? I'm always there for those." The corner of his mouth moved. Behind the kitchen, the land dropped steeply toward a narrow gravel path. Beyond it, the lake showed between bare branches, pewter under the low clouds. The inn's parcel ended just beyond the path. June's vegetable patch occupied a tilted strip of ground hemmed in by stones. Cole stood on the opposite side of the path, with 2 men in clean jackets. He lifted a hand. "Morning, neighbor." Nora did not return the gesture. One of the men pointed uphill toward the woodland parcel. Cole followed his hand, speaking in the enthusiastic tone he used when he believed a conversation might produce money. Ben watched them. "Your brother?" "Yes." "You sound proud." "He brings that out in people." They moved to the veranda. Ben stood beneath the leak and studied the blue enamel pot. "You need a tarp today. Proper roof work when it dries. That buys time, not a roof. What's the difference between time and a roof? About $18,000. Nora sat down on a wicker chair before checking whether it would hold her. It did, though it complained. 18. Maybe more. Won't know until the covering comes off. She stared at the wet road. How much to make 3 rooms usable? You shouldn't be thinking about rooms yet. I'm thinking about income. You don't have heat, safe power, or confirmed water. Guests tend to notice. I'll put it in the description. Ben rested his hands on his hips. You do this often? What? Answer practical problems like they insulted your character. Nora looked up at him. His expression was not unkind, which made the question harder. I bought it yesterday, she said. I heard. Already? Dan called me at 6:30. Ruth called at 6:45. Marcy at the diner called at 6:50. Why did Marcy call? She said she wanted to know whether I thought the place would kill you. And I said I'd inspect it. That wasn't the question. No. Rain began striking the veranda roof with new force. Ben lifted the blue pot and moved it 2 inches to the left so the stream hit the center. Nora rubbed her palms against her jeans. What can I do myself? Clean? Remove ruined material after it's declared safe. Make lists. Stop water from coming in. Don't climb onto the roof. What can you do? Today? Tarp the west slope and brace that corner of the veranda. How much? He named a number low enough that she knew it excluded his labor. I can't accept that. You asked what I could do. I didn't ask for charity. I didn't offer charity. I need somewhere to stay for 6 weeks. Nora looked toward him. I'm finishing the cottage renovation on Bent Pine Road, he said. The owner decided to move in early. My lease ended Friday. There's nowhere else? There are places. None for what I want to pay, which is less than they're asking. That's not how prices work. It's how not paying them works. He nodded toward the east windows. Give me room 3 once the power and plumbing are cleared. I'll handle the porch braces and labor on the temporary roof work. Materials are yours. You want to live here? I've lived here before. When? Winter of 2019. She searched her memory. That was when Grant had begun pressing June about selling, and Nora's Thursday visits had become Thursday calls. Were you working nearby? My wife had asked me to leave. The plainness of it silenced her. Ex-wife, he added. Now. I'm sorry. It was 7 years ago. People still say sorry. They do. He looked through the lobby window at the front desk. June charged me $30 a night and made me fix things whenever she thought I was feeling sorry for myself. A lot got fixed, not the roof. She said the roof needed a professional. You're a carpenter? Exactly. Nora smiled. Ben checked his watch. Think about the trade. I'll get a tarp before the supply store closes. She stood. I'll pay for materials. Yes. And you don't move in until the electricity and water are safe. Yes. And no wandering around downstairs in your underwear. He gave her a level look. That concern seems premature. 1,200 square feet of common area and 7 guest rooms. It's an operational policy. You have 0 operational policies. I have one now. After he left, Nora found a legal pad in the front desk drawer. The first pages contained June's handwriting, calls to return, grocery quantities, a note to ask Ruth whether room 5 needed a new shower curtain. Nora turned to a blank page and wrote safe at the top. Under it, electricity, water, heat, roof, stairs. On another page she wrote pretty, wallpaper, paint, curtains, sign. She stared at the second list, tore it out, and placed it beneath the first. At 11, Ruth arrived carrying sandwiches in a toolbox. Ben says 3 rooms, Nora told her. Ben is an optimist. He says you're the one I should listen to. Ben is a wise man. They ate at one of the dining tables while rain tapped the windows. The room was colder than outside. June's old calendar remained on the wall beside the kitchen door, turned to December. Several dates were circled: the county hospital dinner, the Lakebird count, a utility cruise annual stay. Ruth caught Nora looking. Half of those canceled, she said. Why? June didn't want anyone seeing how bad things had gotten. What things? Herself. The inn. She thought if she closed for a month, she'd never reopen. Nora unwrapped her sandwich. Did you know she lost $12,000 last year? I knew she was losing. And stayed? She asked me to. Dad said she couldn't afford you. She couldn't. Then why? Because she was 79, climbing stairs with sheets against her chest. Because she forgot to eat if nobody put food in front of her. Because you were gone, and Grant came only when something broke. The words landed harder than Ruth seemed to intend. Ruth set down her sandwich. That wasn't fair. It was true. Both can happen. Nora turned the legal pad so Ruth could see the lists. I'm going to make 3 rooms safe, she said. Room 3 for Ben, then 1 and 2. I can reopen those. Ruth read the page. With what money? I'll work evenings. Where? Marcy needs people. Marcy always needs people. That isn't the same as paying well. I don't need well. I need electricity deposit well. And when will you sleep? After I become profitable. Ruth stared at her. It was June's stare, though Nora had never noticed the resemblance before. Not in their faces, in the patient disappointment. You cannot save a place by repeating the thing that broke it, Ruth said. I'm not repeating anything. I'm 27. Exactly, you can ruin yourself much faster. Before Nora could answer, the front door opened. Tessa came in carrying her camera bag and a large flat envelope. She shook rain from her hair and looked between them. I can come back? No, Ruth said. You can tell her. Tessa frowned. Tell her what? Whatever brought you in with your mouth pinched like that? My mouth is normal. It hasn't been normal since 2019. Tessa placed the envelope on the table and removed a stack of photographs. Bellwether's peeling sign, the tilted veranda, June's empty chair near the dining room window, the brass keys hanging behind the desk. They were beautiful in a way that did not flatter the damage. I took them for the Historical Society page, Tessa said, before I knew you were buying it. Nora touched the photograph of the keys. These are good, I know, and modest. I've had a complicated week. Tessa spread the pictures between the sandwich wrappers. If you're keeping the inn, she said, you need to decide what story you're telling. Right now everyone in town thinks this is about June, Grant, or revenge. Nora looked at her. What do you think it's about? Tessa met her eyes at last. I think you vanished for 3 years, she said. And now you've bought a building so nobody can leave you first. Nora left her hand on the photograph. Ruth made a small sound with her teeth. Tessa? No, she asked. I asked what you thought the inn was about. That is what I think. Nora pushed the photograph back across the table. You could have mailed these, and you could have answered one of my messages. The old dining room seemed to contract around them. Rain threaded down the windows, turning the yard beyond into wavering gray. I didn't know what to say. For 3 years? I was dealing with my family. I was dealing with you disappearing. Ruth began gathering sandwich wrappers. I'm going to inspect the pantry. There's nothing in the pantry, Nora said. Then it should be quick. The kitchen door swung closed behind her. Tessa stood with both hands braced against the table. Do you know how I found out Grant had thrown you out? Marcy told me. I came to your apartment, but you weren't there. I called for weeks. I saw the calls. Good. That clears up whether your phone worked. Nora stared at the calendar on the wall. June's circles, June's plans. Everybody seemed to have kept living in ink, while Nora disappeared into blank space. At first I was embarrassed, she said. Tessa waited. I thought Dad would cool down. Then a week passed, and it sounded stupid that I hadn't called you. After a month, it sounded worse. Then every time you left a message, I had to explain why I hadn't answered the message before it. So you let me think I had done something. I knew you'd ask questions. We were friends. That was part of the service. You would have tried to fix it. I would have tried to help you. I didn't want help. Tessa's laugh held no humor. Clearly. Nora stood so quickly that her chair scraped the floor. You think because I bought this place, you get to stand there and explain me? I think you asked me to. I asked about the inn. You keep saying that, like there's a difference. Tessa gathered the photographs. One slipped from the stack and landed face up on the floor. It showed the blue enamel pot beneath the leaking veranda roof, the splash caught in sharp silver detail. Nora picked it up. Leave them, she said. Why? Because they're good. That's not enough. It would be if I'd taken them. Tessa slid the picture from Nora's fingers. Call me when you can say what you actually want. She left with the envelope beneath her arm. Ruth emerged from the pantry. That went well. Were you listening? The pantry is 8 feet away. You could have made noise. I found 6 cans of expired peaches. I didn't feel festive. Nora sat again. She always does that. What? Acts like knowing me gives her permission to be cruel. Ruth stacked the legal pads. Sometimes knowing someone means knowing where the sore spots are. Sometimes it means being tired of walking around them. You're taking her side. I'm taking my sandwich home. By noon, Ben had covered the damaged section of roof with a heavy green tarp held down by strips of lumber. He refused Nora's offer to help from the ground, which mostly consisted of calling up questions. What about that corner? I see it. It looks loose. It's not. The wind is lifting it. That's my jacket. When he climbed down, his boots left dark prints across the veranda. He placed the ladder flat beneath the eaves, so Nora could not accidentally misunderstand the instruction not to use it. The electrician came Monday morning. He was a narrow man named Peter, who spoke to the panel as though it had disappointed him personally. He replaced 2 scorch breakers, disconnected wiring to the West Hall, and left red tape over 3 outlets. "You can have power downstairs and east side," he said. "Nothing west until the damaged circuits are replaced." "What about the boiler?" "Different problem. Everyone keeps saying that." "You have a lot of different problems." He wrote the total on a carbon form. Nora looked at the number, then looked again, as if familiarity might reduce it. "Do you take partial payment?" Peter tilted his head. "How partial?" She paid half from the money meant for Friday's rent, and promised the rest after her first diner shift. Marcy put Nora behind the counter that evening, without an interview. She was a square-faced woman with cropped red hair and reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain. At 60, she had perfected the art of pouring coffee while judging the person receiving it. "Ruth says you need hours," she said. "Ruth says a lot, mostly accurate things. You remember the register? I worked here one summer. You quit without notice. My grandmother needed help at the inn. And now, you need help at the inn. Life's got a sense of humor." Marcy tied an apron around Nora's waist and pointed toward the pie case. Apple on top, cherry in the middle, lemon on bottom. "If someone asks for chocolate cream, tell them tomorrow. What if they're disappointed? They've survived worse." The dinner shift ran until 10. Nora poured coffee, carried meatloaf, and relearned the difference between being tired and being useful. Mr. Talbot occupied a counter stool for 2 hours and tipped $5 on a $7 check. A woman Nora barely knew asked when Bellwether would reopen. "Soon," Nora said. Marcy passed behind her carrying plates. "No lying to customers." "I'm not lying." "Then pick a date." Nora wiped the counter harder than necessary. Near closing, Cole came in with one of the men from the Woodland. They sat in a booth and spread rolled maps across the table. Cole ordered coffee, took 1 sip, and asked Nora whether Marcy had anything less aggressive. "We have water," Nora said. He smiled. "How's the roof?" "Higher than the floor, for now." Nora set the check face down beside his cup. Cole caught her wrist, not hard, but enough. "I wasn't trying to wreck you at the auction," he said quietly. "You bid. Dad told me the building was coming down anyway. I thought you'd quit at 7. He knew I had 8. He knows everything when he's angry." Nora pulled her hand free. "That sounds almost like an excuse. It's almost an apology. Save up for a full one." Cole leaned back. The developer's representative pretended to study the map. "Meredith says you accused Dad of lying about Grandma's last day." "I didn't accuse him. He did lie. You weren't there." "Exactly." Something uncertain crossed Cole's face. He hid it with a glance toward his phone. "What happened to the Woodland?" Nora asked. "I thought the builder wanted all of it." "They're assessing access." Meaning your property narrows the road frontage." Nora went still. Cole saw it and immediately shook his head. "Don't. This isn't some secret advantage. Your land isn't useful to them. It's just in the way." "So, is that why Dad wanted me to undo the sale?" "No. Dad wanted you to undo it because you bought a condemned coat rack with bathrooms." "Charming. The developer can use the upper entrance. It costs more. That's my problem, not yours." He tapped the check. "And I'm paying for coffee, not an easement. Relax." Nora had not realized she was gripping the coffee pot with both hands. She turned away, annoyed that Cole's clumsy honesty had unsettled her more than a threat would have. After closing, Marcy counted Nora's tips at the register. $68. Peter gets 34. "Peter? Who?" "Electrician. Does Peter bus tables?" "I owe him." "Then Peter gets 34. Marcy slid the remaining bills across the counter. "Your grandmother used to sit in booth 4 after closing, ordered 1 egg and toast, then told me how to run the place." "That sounds like her." She was scared near the end. Nora tucked the bills into her wallet. "Did she say that?" "June?" "No. She asked me if I'd ever considered adding waffles." "That's how I knew." The radiator hissed along the wall. Marcy took off her glasses. "Don't make Bellwether prove anything," she said. "Buildings are lousy at family arguments." Tuesday morning, the water was restored. 3 faucets leaked, 1 toilet ran continuously, and the kitchen pipes moaned loudly enough that Ben came downstairs, holding a flashlight as a weapon. He had moved into room 3 with 1 duffel bag, 2 toolboxes, and a coffee maker. He set the coffee maker on the front desk because the outlets in his room remained red-taped until Peter returned. Ruth objected to the location. "This is a reception area." "For who?" Ben asked. "Future guests. Future guests can have future coffee." Ruth relocated it to the kitchen. Nora spent the afternoon cleaning room 1. The curtains released a cloud of dust that coated her hair. She scrubbed the windowsill, patched nail holes, and discovered that the wallpaper pattern contained tiny blue birds instead of the flowers she had always assumed. At 5, her landlord called. He had been patient, he said. He had expenses. If she could not pay by Friday, he had someone ready to take the apartment at the beginning of the month. Nora sat on the floor beneath the blue birds, looking at her legal pad. Rent would cost more than the boiler inspection. Giving up the apartment would cover Peter, the closing costs, and some roof materials. She had already started sleeping on a folding cot in the lobby after late diner shifts rather than driving back. "You can have it," she said. The landlord's relief was immediate enough to sting. She had 11 days to move. When she told Ruth, Ruth closed her eyes. "When were you planning to ask whether the inn has a safe room for you?" "It has 6. It has 1 occupied safe room. I can take room 1. Room 1 should earn money. I can take 4. It's small. Room 4 shares a wall with the damaged hall. It's dry. So is a match until you strike it." Ben came through carrying a brace for the veranda. "Room 4 is safe," he said. "If she stays away from the west wall." Ruth turned on him. "I thought you were wise." "Situationally." By Friday night, Nora's clothes hung in room 4's narrow wardrobe. Her dishes filled 1 kitchen cabinet. The cot fit between the bed frame and the window, leaving 8 inches of walking space. She set June's brass bell on the sill. Outside, wind worried at the tarp. Downstairs, Ben's coffee maker clicked off. The building settled around her in groans, taps, and 1 long scrape she decided not to investigate. Her phone lit with a message from Tessa. It was a photograph of June standing on the veranda years earlier, chin lifted, 1 hand shielding her eyes from the sun. No words accompanied it. Nora stared at the image until the screen dimmed. Then she typed, "I want you to help me tell the truth about this place." She erased it. What she sent was, "I was ashamed. Then I was ashamed it took me so long to call. I'm still ashamed, and I miss you." The reply did not come that night, but Nora left the phone beside the bell with the sound turned on. At 6:12, someone knocked on the front door. Nora woke sitting upright on the cot, with June's cardigan in her dream, and the brass bell clutched in her hand like a weapon. The knocking came again. Tessa stood on the veranda holding 2 paper cups and a tripod. Nora opened the door. "You're here early. You said you missed me at 11:43 last night. I gave you nearly 7 hours to regret it. I spent most of those asleep. That was careless." Tessa handed her a coffee and came inside. Her eyes traveled over Nora's wrinkled shirt, the crease on her cheek, and the blanket visible upstairs. "You moved in. Temporarily. Temporarily is how people acquire goats and marriages. Do you want to come back at a more reasonable hour?" "No. I want morning light in the dining room." She set up the tripod near the windows. Nora stood holding both coffee and bell. Tessa adjusted the camera. "I miss you too." Nora waited. "I'm also angry, I know. You don't get to send 1 good message and make me easy. I know, and if you disappear again, I'm coming after you. That sounds healthy." "I'll bring Ruth." "That sounds terrifying." Tessa looked through the viewfinder. "Move the coffee pot off the front desk. That's Ben's. He owns an entire room. He can keep things there. You and Ruth are going to get along. We always have." Tessa took photographs without improving anything first. She captured the water stains, red tape over outlets, rolled carpet in the hallway, and Nora's legal pad open to a page of costs. When Nora tried to move a trash bag out of the dining room doorway, Tessa told her to leave it. "This is the truth?" Nora asked. "This is this morning. People don't book rooms because they admire trash. They don't trust photographs that hide it either." Nora leaned against the wall. "I can't post those. Not on a booking page. You don't have a booking page. The old site has one. The old site has a photograph from before humans had reliable color. Grandma is in color. Barely." Ben entered from the kitchen carrying his mug. His hair was wet and combed, and he wore a flannel shirt beneath his work jacket. Tessa raised the camera. "No," he said. "I didn't take it." "You were going to." "How do you know?" "I was married." He walked outside. Tessa watched the door close. "Interesting." "Don't." I said one word. You said it like there were 6 more behind it. They started in the dining room. Tessa photographed June's calendar while Nora wiped mouse droppings from the baseboards. At the December page, Tessa moved closer. County hospital dinner, she read. Isn't that the annual recruitment weekend? I think so. They bring nurses and physical therapists in from out of town. Ruth said it canceled. Tessa flipped backward. November showed 3 blocks marked CG Utilities. October had the Lake Festival and 4 surnames Nora recognized from Thursday calls. September was crowded with arrows, meal notes, and room numbers. She had regular business, Tessa said. She also lost $12,000. Both can be true. Everyone had started saying that to Nora. It felt less like wisdom each time. She carried the calendar to the front desk and opened the drawers. Pens, stamps, rubber bands, a dried-out bottle of correction fluid. Beneath a stack of local menus lay a black reservation book for the previous year. June's handwriting moved across the pages in blue ink. Some entries were formal. Lila Harris, RN, RM3, 12 nights. Others needed translation. Picky pillows, back after surgery. Tall Paul, no sausage. Anniversary people, don't mention surprise. Nora smiled before she could help it. What? Tessa asked. Nora showed her the page. Who's Tall Paul? No idea. That's good. We should use it. For what? The restoration page. A photograph of the ledger with a caption asking Tall Paul to identify himself. I'm not putting guest names online. We cover the names. Then how will Tall Paul identify himself? Tessa considered this. Good point. They found 6 years of reservation books, each more crowded than the last until the final one. The empty spaces began in January, grew through spring, and swallowed nearly all of December. Yet even on quiet pages, June had penciled future notes. Bird counters want packed breakfast. Matthew's reunion asks about whole house. Hospital coordinator, call in August. The inn had not survived on strangers finding it by accident. It had a rhythm, utility crews in winter, bird watchers in early spring, reunions after Memorial Day, hospital contracts when the lake cabins closed. June knew which guests arrived late, who needed downstairs storage, who woke before breakfast. Nora ran one finger down a list of deposits, balances, and dietary notes. This is why she kept the dining room heated. Tessa looked up from her camera. She wasn't waiting for 2 breakfast customers, Nora said. She was holding the room for all these groups. Who stopped coming? Because she stopped answering. Or because the inn stopped being able to take them. Nora closed the book. The distinction mattered. It just did not produce a roof. At 10, Meredith's black SUV pulled into the drive. She emerged in a camel-colored coat and shoes, entirely unsuited to gravel. A clear dry cleaning bag hung from 2 fingers. Tessa glanced through the window. Want me to leave? No. Want me to hide behind the desk and record everything? No. You've become very controlling since acquiring property. Meredith entered without knocking. Her gaze found the camera, then Nora. I need to speak with you privately. Tessa knows I bought the inn. This isn't about the inn. Nora looked at the bag. June's red cardigan hung inside, cleaned and pressed. The pearl buttons caught the light. Meredith laid it over the front desk. It smells like chemicals now. You had it cleaned. It smelled like the auction. It smelled like Grandma. It smelled like wet cardboard and strangers. Nora touched the plastic. Why are you giving it to me? Meredith removed one glove finger by finger. Because I don't want it. You paid $90. I know what I paid. You bid after I did. I know that too. Tessa lifted her camera bag. I'm going to photograph some mold. When she had gone upstairs, Meredith looked around the lobby. I only wanted it because you wanted it, she said. Nora had expected an explanation involving preservation or sentiment. The truth landed differently. That's awful. Yes. Why? Because you walked onto that lawn looking like the injured heroine in everybody else's story. I didn't speak to anybody. You didn't have to. Ruth had done it for you. Ruth mailed me an auction notice. She made sure half the town knew Dad hadn't told you about the funeral. Half the town should know. Meredith's chin lifted. Mom's death was not public entertainment. Grandma? What? You called her Mom. She was Grandma to me. She was my mother. Nora went still. Meredith's eyes shone with angry tears. You don't own grief because Dad treated you badly. I never said I did. You make it sound like we all sat around her bed voting not to call you. Did you know she asked for me? Meredith's expression changed. Dad said he called you, she said. He didn't. He told us you weren't coming. He told Grandma I was on my way. Meredith reached for the front desk, missed the edge, then covered the movement by removing her other glove. You heard that from Ruth. Yes. And you believe Ruth over Dad. Yes. The answer came without effort. Meredith stared through the open doorway into the dining room. He made the funeral arrangements. Cole and I arrived the night she died. He said she wanted everything quiet. He lied. You don't know every conversation he had with her. Neither do you. They stood on opposite sides of the cardigan. Meredith finally said, I'm not defending what he did. You just don't want anyone to name it. I don't want my father turned into a monster because one person has to be blamed. He packed my clothes in trash bags, kept me from Grandma, lied to her while she was dying, and bid against me for a building he didn't want. And she was asking him to fix that building every week for 40 years. Nora's reply stopped. Meredith took a breath. He was wrong about you. He can also be right that this place used people up. She pushed the cardigan toward Nora. I don't know how to clean it without losing the smell, she said, so I ruined it. After Meredith left, Nora took the sweater upstairs. She hung it in the narrow wardrobe beside her diner uniform and left the plastic open. Tessa was in room 7's doorway, photographing the exposed lath. How much did you hear? Nora asked. Mold is very quiet. That much. Yes. By afternoon, Ben had braced the eastern veranda corner. Peter restored safe power to rooms 1 through 3. Ruth tested sheets, rejecting half for stains or thinning fabric. Nora called the county hospital's recruitment office and reached voicemail. She left a message, hung up, then immediately wished she had sounded more professional. At the diner, she worked through the supper rush, with plaster dust still in her hair. Marcy handed her an order for booth 2. You've got a phone call? Who calls a diner? People who know you're working here. Nora took the receiver beside the register. A woman introduced herself as the hospital staffing coordinator. She remembered Bellwether. More importantly, she remembered June allowing check-in after midnight and serving breakfast at 4 in the afternoon to night shift recruits. We're using the Highway Motel now, she said, but they won't guarantee quiet rooms. Nora looked toward the kitchen, where plates moved beneath the heat lamps. How many rooms do you need? Not many. 2 next month, possibly 3 the month after. Are you operating? Nora thought of the legal pad, the tarp, and the west hall behind disconnected wires. 3 rooms are being prepared, she said carefully. What's your rate? Nora named June's old price plus $20. Silence followed. She nearly lowered it. That includes breakfast? The woman asked. Yes. And late check-in? Yes. Send me an invoice for 2 rooms, 4 nights. I'll need your tax form. When the call ended, Nora stood holding the receiver. Marcy leaned through the kitchen window. Good news? I have a reservation. That means someone agreed to sleep there? 2 someones. On purpose? Nora laughed. The reservation was 5 weeks away. The deposit would barely cover the plumber. The roof remained beneath a tarp, and the boiler inspector was coming Thursday. Still, when she returned to the inn after closing, she opened June's black reservation book to the correct dates. In the first empty line, Nora wrote County General, 2 rooms, 4 nights. She sat behind the desk for a while, looking at her handwriting beside June's. Then she rang the brass bell once. From room 3, Ben called, Is something on fire? No? Then please establish a bell policy. Nora smiled into the empty lobby. Working on it. The boiler inspector arrived Thursday with a canvas tool bag and the expression of a man attending a wake. He spent 40 minutes in the basement. Nora waited at the top of the stairs while the sounds below progressed from metallic tapping to a low whistle, and finally, silence. When he came up, he wiped his hands on a red rag. Well, Nora asked, you want the long version or the useful one? Whichever is cheaper. The useful one is, don't turn it on. It's already off. Keep up the good work. He explained that the boiler's firebox was cracked, the circulating pump had seized, and 2 sections of pipe needed replacing. Repairing it would cost enough that replacement made more sense. Replacement would cost enough that Nora briefly considered turning the basement into a seasonal swimming pool. She added the number to the safe list. The paper had begun curling at the corners from being handled. Ben read it over her shoulder. Cross it out. I can't cross out heat. You can delay whole building heat. It'll be May before your first reservation. May gets cold. Put approved electric units in the 3 rooms. Heat the dining room only during meals. Close the west side completely. Peter said the wiring can handle that. He said it could handle 3 units if nobody uses a hairdryer, toaster, and vacuum on the same circuit. What if a guest wants toast with good hair in a clean room? Choose your market. Ruth stood at the kitchen counter sorting June's recipe cards into piles. Bird watchers don't care about hair. Hospital recruits might, Nora said. They work 12-hour shifts. They'll care about doors that lock and coffee that appears. Nora drew one line through replace boiler, then rewrote it beneath the list under later. The word felt like defeat, pretending to be organization. Tessa named the online restoration page Bellwether, still standing. Nora objected. It sounds like the building has survived a war. It survived your family. We agreed not to turn this into revenge. You agreed. I was taking pictures. They compromised on Bellwether Inn. The windows are open, which Tessa considered sentimental, and Nora considered accurate. The first post showed the 3 open lobby windows, lace curtains lifting into the room. The second showed Ben's green tarp over the roof. The third showed Ruth holding 6 expired cans of peaches with the grim dignity of an undertaker. Ruth made Tessa remove that one. I look 80, you look 63. I look like a 63-year-old woman who found peaches. Nobody needs that. Within 2 days, former guests began leaving comments. A woman in Ohio remembered the apple butter. A man in Pennsylvania posted a photograph of himself, and June, holding a fish neither looked pleased to touch. Someone asked whether the porch still squeaked outside room 4. Mr. Talbot replied, "Everything there squeaks, including management." Then a man named Paul wrote, "I am 6'6", I avoid sausage," and June called me worse things than Tall Paul. Nora showed the comment to Tessa at the diner. "He exists," Tessa said. I never doubted him. You said June might have invented him because she was bored. Both could be true. Tall Paul reserved room 1 for 2 nights in June, conditional upon safe toast production. His deposit paid the balance of Peter's bill. Nora began measuring progress in oddly specific victories. 2 window locks, a toilet that stopped running, $36 in tips after a slow Tuesday, 4 usable towels recovered from a stack of 20, a section of veranda railing that no longer moved when touched. Dan bought Nora's truck back for $750. You said 8, she told him over the counter at his repair shop. I found mouse damage. There were no mice in my truck. There was a nest in the glove compartment. That could have been there when you sold it to me. He considered that. $775, 8, $790, and I let you borrow the blue pickup on diner nights until Ben gets tired of driving you. Ben doesn't drive me, he will. Blue pickup pulls left. It leans right. That creates balance. She signed the title over. The money covered closing costs, 3-room heaters, and material for the veranda braces. It also left her without a vehicle she could call hers. When Dan drove her back to Bellwether, she watched her old truck diminish in the side mirror and felt as if she had traded a small piece of escape for lumber. Ruth agreed to work 12 paid hours a week. Nora had tried to describe the first month as everyone pitching in. Ruth put down a stack of folded sheets. Everyone is not an accounting category. I'll pay you after the hospital deposit comes. Then I start after the hospital deposit comes. What about everything you've already done? I chose to do that. So, you'll volunteer but won't let me ask you to volunteer? Correct. That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense if the goal is teaching you not to build a business out of favors. People are too guilty to refuse. Nora wrote Ruth, 12 hours beneath payroll. What if I need 13? You do it. What if I'm at the diner? You schedule better. What if something unexpected happens? Ruth smiled. At an inn? Unlikely. Ben worked on Bellwether early in the mornings and after leaving the cottage renovation. By the 3rd week, the veranda no longer seemed to lean toward the road. He replaced the rotten rear treads and rebuilt the threshold at the kitchen door. Each evening, he washed sawdust from his hands at the deep sink, while Nora assembled some meal too tired to qualify as cooking. One night, she found him eating peanut butter from the jar. There's bread, she said. I know. That usually participates. I didn't want to dirty a knife. You're holding a spoon. A spoon fits the jar better. She set 2 bowls of canned soup on the table. Ruth says you fixed half this place in 2019. Ruth exaggerates when it makes other people work harder. Grandma made you fix things because you were feeling sorry for yourself? She gave me a list. Was it labeled safe? It was labeled Ben. Nora smiled. What was on it? Door hinges, dining tables, a closet rod in 5. She kept adding things after I finished. Did it help? With the inn. I meant you. He took a spoonful of soup and considered the question. My ex-wife said I could turn anything into a repair, except a conversation. That sounds rehearsed. She said it more than once. Was she right? Yes. Nora waited for him to retreat behind the answer. Instead, he turned the spoon between his fingers. I thought if I was useful enough, people had to keep me, he said. June knew better. She gave me work and made me pay $30 anyway. That was kindness? At the time, it was infuriating. Nora looked toward the legal pad on the counter, its list covered in check marks, arrows, and amounts owed. Ruth thinks I'm doing the same thing June did. She thinks you're working instead of grieving. Are those mutually exclusive? No. That's what makes it convenient. She scraped her spoon around the bowl. You all seem very comfortable evaluating me in my own kitchen. It's June's kitchen. I bought it, then fixed the drawer that hits my knee. Ben stood, washed his bowl, and went upstairs. Nora opened the offending drawer. It slid out too far and struck exactly where he had said. She left it that way. The hospital deposit arrived on a Monday. Ruth started officially Tuesday at 8 and spent her first paid hour throwing away supplies Nora had planned to keep. These pillowcases are fine, Nora argued. You can see through them. That means they're breathable. It means a guest will put a toe through one and wake up wearing a scarf. Ruth rejected the old mattresses in rooms 1 and 2. Nora bought replacements from a warehouse using a 6-month payment plan that made the beds feel less like furniture than dependents. Tessa photographed the finished rooms. They had not become stylish. The furniture remained mismatched. The wallpaper bluebirds still flew around room 1, and room 2's dresser carried the pale picture ring. But the windows opened. The locks worked. The beds were clean, and Ruth placed fresh lavender on the pillows without commenting on where she found it. Nora stood in the hallway while Tessa reviewed the photographs. Do they look cheap? Nora asked. They look honest. That wasn't the question. No, they don't look cheap. Do they look like Grandma's rooms? Tessa lowered the camera. They look like yours with some of her left in them. Nora was not sure whether that was praise, but it stayed with her. 2 weeks before the hospital reservation, Lila Harris called. She was the traveling nurse from the Black Ledger, the one who had slept in room 3 with a towel beneath the door. I saw the page, she said. I'm coming through on Thursday, just one night. Is 3 available? Nora glanced at the key cubbies. Room 3 is occupied. Oh, that was my room. Our carpenter lives there. Does he sleep days? No. Then he doesn't need it the way I do. Nora laughed. Room 1 is quieter than it used to be. I can put a towel under the door. You know about the towel? June wrote everything down. The line went silent for a moment. Then Lila said, That sounds like June. Nora took the reservation. Lila would be Bellwether's first paying guest under its new ownership, arriving in 4 days. The list immediately multiplied. Breakfast groceries, check-in forms, emergency numbers, a new smoke detector in room 1, paint over a scuff in the hallway. Nora stayed up after diner shifts, cleaning things that were already clean. Wednesday night, she carried a basket of towels up the main staircase and felt the 4th tread flex beneath her weight. She stopped. The tread looked solid. June's faded runner covered its center, held in place by brass rods. Nora shifted her foot toward the edge and heard a soft wooden crack. Ben was outside finishing the veranda rail. She could call him. He would pull up the runner, remove the tread, and possibly close the staircase until it was repaired. Lila was due the next afternoon. Nora set down the basket and examined the underside from the little closet beneath the stairs. A thin line had split along the back of the tread. Not through. Not yet. She found a piece of chalk and marked an X on the safe outer edge beneath the runner where no guest could see it. Tomorrow, she decided. After Lila checked in, Ben could repair it while she slept. Nora carried the towels upstairs, stepping carefully to the side. Then she went back down and moved a potted fern in front of the loose end of the runner. It did not hide the stair. It only made the lobby look finished. The fern bothered her all morning. It stood beside the staircase in a blue ceramic pot, broad leaves hiding the runner's loose corner. Every time Nora crossed the lobby, she saw the chalk mark beneath the carpet as clearly as if it had been painted across the wall. Ben came down at 7, carrying a level and a travel mug. "Why is that there?" he asked. Nora's stomach tightened. "What?" "The fern." The window was drying it out. He looked at the window, then at the fern. "It's raining. It still gets light." Ben lifted one leaf between two fingers. Dust coated the underside. "Thriving," he said. He went out to work on the veranda railing. Nora told herself she would mention the tread at breakfast. Then Ruth arrived with clean towels and an argument about whether wrapped soap looked welcoming or institutional. Tessa came to photograph the front desk. Marcy called to say Nora could come in late because Thursday lunch was slow. By 10, the lobby smelled of lemon polish and coffee. The brass room 1 key hung alone on a hook marked Arrivals. Nora printed Lila's check-in sheet, crossed out 3 unnecessary lines, printed it again, and moved the fern 2 inches farther from the stairs. Ruth watched her. "That plant offend you? I'm finding the best light. There is no best light today. What do you think of this?" Nora held up the check-in page. "I think Lila knows her home address. It's standard. You've owned an inn for less than a month. Nothing you do is standard yet." Ruth placed a plate beneath the glass cake cover. She had baked June's cinnamon coffee cake, though she insisted she had done it because the kitchen needed testing. Nora cut a corner from it. Ruth slapped her hand with a dish towel. "That's for the guest. You made 12 pieces, and now there are 12. There are 11. Then you've already had yours." At 3:30, a silver sedan pulled into the drive. Nora was behind the desk before the engine stopped. She straightened the reservation book, adjusted the bowl of peppermints, then removed the fused pink lump and dropped in individually wrapped ones. Lila Harris emerged wearing navy scrubs beneath a long coat. She was in her late 40s, with cropped black hair and the loose, exhausted posture of someone whose shift had ended in another county. She looked up at the inn. "Well," she said, "it's grayer." Nora stepped onto the veranda. "The paint is on the later list." "I liked it gray." "That's lucky." Lila opened the trunk and took out a suitcase. "I'm Nora, June's granddaughter. I know who you are." The words made Nora pause. Lila shut the trunk. "June had a photograph of you behind the desk. She told people you were working in New York." "I have never worked in New York." She also told one guest you were studying marine biology. "I answer phones for a regional appliance distributor." That would have disappointed him. He had questions about dolphins. Lila smiled, saving Nora from needing to. Inside, she stopped beside the registration book. "You kept the keys. We kept everything that worked, and some things that don't, I assume. The website, the toast, not tested." Lila signed the check-in sheet. Her handwriting was narrow and slanted, exactly as it appeared in June's ledger. Nora handed her the brass key. "Breakfast is 7 to 10, but if you're sleeping, I can leave something in the refrigerator. I'm meeting a friend for dinner and leaving early. Coffee at 6 would make you my favorite person. That's a low price." "I'm tired." Ben entered through the side door. Sawdust covered his shoulders, and one hand was smeared with green paint from the veranda rail. "Ben," Lila said. He stopped. "Lila, you're still here?" "I left for several years. June said your wife came back for you." "She didn't." June edited. Nora looked at him. Ben shrugged. "Apparently." Lila took hold of her suitcase. "Room 1? "I'll carry it," Ben said. "You're painting. I'm done." Nora stepped from behind the desk. The warning rose in her throat. She could tell him to use the edge. She could say the tread needed checking. He would be annoyed, but Lila was already here. The room was already paid for. The stair was one board. Ben picked up the suitcase and set his right foot on the 4th tread. The wood broke with a sharp report. His leg plunged through to the thigh. The suitcase struck the wall, bounced down 2 steps, and burst open. Navy shirts, socks, and a bright purple bra spilled across the lobby. Ben caught the railing with his left hand. His body swung sideways. For an instant, his shoulders seemed to pull at an impossible angle. Ruth screamed his name. Then he was still, half kneeling, one leg trapped through the staircase. Nobody moved. Ben said very evenly, "Get the suitcase off my ankle." Nora lunged forward. Lila grabbed the suitcase first and shoved it down the remaining steps. Ruth braced Ben's back while he pulled his leg free. The broken tread collapsed entirely into the closet beneath. He sat on the step above the gap. Blood showed through his jeans near the shin. Lila crouched in front of him. Her exhaustion vanished. "Can you move your ankle?" "Yes. Don't answer before you try." Ben flexed his foot. His face tightened. "Shoulder?" she asked. Pulled. Did you hit your head? No. Any back pain? No. Lila examined the scrape through the torn denim, then checked his shoulder. Ben tolerated it with the expression of a man being audited. Nora stood at the bottom of the stairs, unable to make her hands stop shaking. Lila looked over. First aid kit? Kitchen, left of the sink. Ruth went to get it. Ben's gaze dropped to the displaced runner. The chalk X was visible on the outer edge of the tread below the brake. He touched the mark with 2 fingers. What is this? Nora felt the room change. I marked the safe side. His eyes lifted to hers. When? Last night. Ruth stopped in the kitchen doorway holding the first aid kit. Ben looked at the fern, then at Nora. You knew? I heard it crack, but it wasn't all the way through. I was going to tell you this morning. You didn't. I thought it would hold one more day. Based on what? I looked underneath. With what? She had no answer. Ben stood too fast. His face went white, and Lila caught his elbow. Sit down, she ordered. I'm fine. You're limping. I've limped before. This isn't a talent. He steadied himself against the railing, then looked at Nora again. You put a plant in front of it. It wasn't hiding the stare. You moved the runner back over the crack. I marked it. Under the runner. The stupidity of that arrived whole. Nora could not defend it without making it worse, but silence looked like calculation. I needed to get through today, she said. Ben's mouth opened slightly. Not anger, disbelief. You needed to get through today, he repeated. I was going to repair it. You were going to have me repair it. Yes. After I carried your guest over it. I didn't ask you to carry the suitcase, Ruth said. Nora? The word cut across the lobby. Nora heard herself. Her face burned. I didn't mean that. Ben sat again, more from the pain than obedience. Lila cleaned the scrape while he looked at the wall. Nora knelt beside the open suitcase and began folding Lila's clothes with clumsy hands. The purple bra had landed over the fused peppermints she had forgotten to throw away. Lila picked it up. That's mine, she said. Sorry, I assumed. Nora stopped folding. You can't stay here. No. I'll pay for the highway motel. I can pay for a motel. This is my fault. The motel is full. Nora looked up. Thursday contractor traffic, Lila said. Why do you think I called? Marcy had a guest room at her house, but asking would turn another failure into a favor someone was too guilty to refuse. Nora called anyway. Marcy said yes before Nora finished the explanation. Lila repacked her suitcase and waited while Ruth drove Ben to urgent care in the blue pickup. Ben protested that he could drive himself. Ruth took the keys from his hand. At the veranda, Lila turned back to Nora. June once closed the whole second floor for 6 weeks because a pipe burst in room 5, she said. I know I should have closed the stairs. That's not what I'm telling you. Nora waited. She charged me $15 to sleep in the dining room on a rollaway. She said if I complained, she'd charge $20. Nora almost smiled. Lila did not. The place wasn't good because nothing went wrong, she said. It was good because she never made a guest pretend something was safe. The screen door closed behind her. Nora refunded the full room charge and added enough for Lila's dinner. The transaction overdrew the in-account by $11. Ben returned after 8 with his shin bandaged and his left arm in a sling. The x-rays showed no break, but the doctor had ordered him not to lift for at least a week. He walked past Nora without stopping. I'll cover what you lose on the cottage job, she said. He turned at the foot of the stairs. The gap forced him to look up at the rooms he could no longer reach. With what money? I'll work more shifts. You're already not sleeping. I'll figure it out. That isn't payment. I'm trying to make this right. No. You're trying to get to the part where you're forgiven. She flinched. Ben looked toward the legal pad on the front desk. You made a safe list, he said. Then you hid the first thing that threatened your opening. I was scared. So was June. He crossed the lobby and took his coffee maker from the kitchen. Where are you going? Dan has a cot at the shop. You have room 3. I can't reach room 3. The back stairs are part of the closed west side. Nora knew that. She had simply wanted another answer. Ben held the coffee maker against his chest with his good arm. I'll finish the porch when I can lift, he said. Trade's a trade. Then he left. Ruth stood behind the desk after he was gone. You should say it, Nora told her. I think you heard it. I didn't do what Grandma did. You saw a problem, feared what it would cost, and let someone else take the risk. One stair for one day. One West Hall for one winter. One season of empty rooms she called full. It always sounds small when you say it correctly. Nora sank into the desk chair. I closed the inn, she said. You never opened it? That was worse because it was true. Tessa arrived carrying her camera, but did not take it from the bag. Nora told her everything, including the chalk mark and the fern. What do we put on the page? Tessa asked. Temporary maintenance. No. Opening delayed. True, but not enough. Nora stared at the reservation book. 2 hospital rooms waited on dates 3 weeks away. Tall Paul's name waited after that. If I tell people, they'll cancel. They might. Then I can't afford the repairs. Tessa sat across from her. Call me when you can say what you actually want. The repeated words landed differently this time. Nora opened the restoration page and began typing. Our first guest could not stay tonight because I failed to act on damage I had noticed in the main staircase. No guest was injured. Our carpenter was, thankfully not seriously. The inn is closed while the staircase is rebuilt and all guest access is inspected again. Existing reservations will receive full information and refunds if requested. I wanted Bellwether to look ready before it was ready. It wasn't. Her finger hovered above the button. Tessa did not tell her to press it. Nora did. Then she moved the fern away from the staircase, rolled back the runner, and carried the potted plant outside into the rain. The post drew 43 comments before Nora could make herself look again. Several were kind. Several were versions of "thank you for your honesty," which felt less like praise than a sentence handed down. A man whose profile picture showed him holding a base wrote that old buildings were money pits and women had no business renovating them alone. Marcy replied that he had once tried to microwave a metal bowl. Lila wrote, I'll come back when the stairs do. Nora stared at that one until Tessa reached across the front desk and closed the laptop. You need sleep. I need to call the hospital. At midnight, they'll see the post. Staffing coordinators sleep. You don't know that. I photographed their annual banquet. They sleep while people make speeches. Nora opened the laptop again. Tessa closed it. They did this twice more before Tessa unplugged it and carried it into the dining room. The hospital coordinator called at 8 the next morning. We need documentation that the guest areas are safe before check-in, she said. Of course. If you can't provide it 5 business days before arrival, we'll relocate the recruits. I understand. We'd rather not. Nora sat straighter. You'd rather not? The Highway Motel assigns rooms beside the ice machine. One of our candidates withdrew at breakfast last year after someone filled a cooler for 20 minutes. I can guarantee distance from ice. Guarantee stairs first. Tall Paul did not cancel. Neither did the couple who had reserved for the lake festival after seeing Tessa's page. One guest did. An anniversary booking Nora had not met. She refunded the deposit and watched the inn account fall back below $50. At 10, Grant's sedan pulled in. He walked through the open front door, stopped at the missing tread, and looked at Nora. You posted this online. The inn has a page. So I've been told. Meredith, everyone. He wore work clothes instead of his good coat, jeans, heavy boots, a canvas jacket stained at one cuff. He looked less like the man from the auction and more like the father who had once repaired Nora's washing machine while insulting its manufacturer. Grant crouched beside the staircase. He pulled the runner farther back and examined the split stringer where the tread had torn loose. Who got hurt? Ben Carver. I remember him. He pulled his shoulder and cut his leg. Guessed? Wasn't injured? Because she wasn't on the stairs or because you got lucky? Nora gripped the edge of the front desk. Both. He stood. This is what I told you would happen. Yes. Grant seemed to lose the next sentence. Nora looked at the gap. You were right that the inn could take everything if I let it. His face altered, suspicion replacing anger. Agreement was not something they knew how to do anymore. I won't let it, she continued. You've sold your truck, given up your apartment, and injured a man within a month. I also reopened the east wiring, stopped the roof leak, repaired the veranda, and booked rooms. You didn't open. No. The word hurt, but she did not soften it. Grant walked to the bottom of the stairs. Your grandmother covered problems with rugs too, Ruth said. She'd put a vase in front of water damage, hang a picture over a crack. Once she wrapped a pipe in a guest towel and told me it was holding. Was it? For 3 days. Nora imagined June tying a knot around a leaking pipe, satisfied by the temporary silence. Why didn't you make her close? I tried. Why didn't you help her run it differently? I had a job, a house, 3 adults calling me every time their cars made a sound. I called you twice about my car. You called me 9 times about other things. Nora almost smiled. The number sounded accurate. Grant placed one hand on the newel post. Sell it back to the estate. There is no estate now. Sell it to me. For $1,300 for what you put into it. He said it quickly before calculation could catch up. Nora studied him. Then what? I remove the liability. You tear it down. The structure isn't economically sensible. That's not an answer. Yes. Eventually? Rain had stopped overnight. Through the dining room windows, sunlight broke across the wet lawn in white patches. I'm not selling, she said. Then this happens again. No. You don't get to say no as if the building listens. I mean, I won't hide it again. Grant's expression hardened. You think confession makes incompetence admirable? No. It makes it visible. She heard Tessa's influence in the words. Grant looked toward the legal pad. Safe lay above pretty. Nora had added guest access, second check, in block letters. You always did like a public trial, he said. I didn't name you in that post. You didn't need to. Everything you do here is an accusation. Nora thought of the diner, the reservations, the ledgers, Ben eating peanut butter from a jar. None of it felt like Grant until he entered the room and stood at its center. This isn't about you every day, she said. He took the sentence like an insult. Before leaving, he stopped on the veranda and pressed both hands against the repaired railing, testing Ben's work. It held. He gave no sign that he had noticed. Cole arrived that afternoon in an old work truck Nora had not seen since he bought his first SUV. Lumber extended past the tailgate with a red cloth tied to the end. She met him outside. No, I haven't said anything. You're delivering wood, which famously doesn't speak. Did Dad send you? He told me you refused to sell. That wasn't the question. Cole pulled off his sunglasses. He told me the stairs were unsafe. I called Ben. Ben gave me measurements and a list. Ben spoke to you? People answer when I call. Nora glanced toward the truck. I can't pay for that. It came from the old shed on my parcel. You bought woodland, not the carriage barn. The shed in the woodland. It's full of lumber Dad stored 15 years ago. He forgot it existed. Does he know you took it? Does it matter? Yes. Cole sighed. I bought the parcel and everything on it. No hidden crime, no theft. Try to enjoy yourself. I'm not taking a favor. Then consider it payment. For what? Road access. Her stomach tightened. He saw it. Not legal access. Not an easement. I need to bring 2 survey vehicles through your drive next Tuesday because the upper entrance is mud. You can say no? Are they surveying for the builder? Yes. Nora looked past him toward the narrow drive, then up the hill. No heavy equipment. 2 pickups. No cutting through the garden. Nobody wants the garden. No parking in front of the inn. We're surveying dirt, Nora. There won't be a parade. And the lumber covers that? The lumber covers me not spending 3 hours moving it somewhere else. Let me feel clever. She agreed. Cole had worked construction during college and retained more skill than she expected. He removed the runner and all 4 lower treads, revealing dry rot along one edge of the stringer. The repair grew as repairs did. Nora held boards while he measured. She fetched tools before he asked for them, except when she fetched the wrong ones. That's a socket wrench, Cole said. You said wrench. I said crescent. It has curves. Go inside. I own the stairs. You own several disconnected pieces of wood. They worked until evening. When Cole stripped a screw, he swore in exactly Grant's rhythm. He heard himself and laughed. Dad taught us both to repair things, Nora said. He taught me. He told you to hold the flashlight. He told me I was doing it wrong. You were. I was pointing at the pipe. You were pointing at his face. His face was near the pipe. Cole drove in the next screw. After a while, Nora said, You bid against me. His shoulders went still. I know. You gave me an almost apology. I know that too. I'm collecting almost now. He set the drill down. I thought Dad wanted the inn gone because it was draining Grandma. I thought you were doing what you always did, making one dramatic gesture so the rest of us looked heartless. What dramatic gestures? You sent back every Christmas gift for 2 years. He wrote former daughter on the first card. I didn't know that. You didn't ask? No. Cole rubbed sawdust from his palm. I didn't. Nora waited. "I'm sorry I bid," he said. "Not almost." She looked at him. He picked up the drill again. "Don't make it weird. You just achieved emotional adulthood. I need a minute. I will leave you without stairs." She smiled. They finished the structural repair Sunday afternoon. Cole refused payment and reminded her about Tuesday's survey vehicles. The new treads remained unfinished, pale against the dark old wood. Ben came by after closing at the diner. His sling was gone, though he kept his left elbow close to his body. He inspected the stringer with a flashlight, tested every tread, and checked the railing anchors. "Cole did this? With me. Which part did you do?" I held the flashlight correctly. "Important apprenticeship." Nora stood at the bottom while he climbed to the landing and back. His limp was nearly gone. "I paid your urgent care bill," she said. "I saw. I owe you for the cottage hours. 2 days. I wrote them down. I believe you." She looked toward room 3's key. It still hung behind the desk. She had not touched his tools or duffel. "You can move back in." "I could. I'm not asking you to forgive me." "Good. I want to say something without making you take care of how I feel about it." Ben waited. "I knew the stair was wrong. I was afraid telling you would cost the reservation, so I made your safety part of my gamble. I'm sorry." He looked at the new tread beneath his boot. "That's accurate," he said. It was not forgiveness. It was not rejection either. Ben took the room 3 key from its hook. "I'm staying through the original 6 weeks," he said. "The porch work counts toward 4. The other 2 go against what you owe me. That's not enough for your lost wages. No, you'll still owe some. How much?" "I'll write it down." Relief rose in Nora's throat. She made herself swallow it instead of thanking him as though his boundaries were a gift. "Also," he said, "if I mark something unsafe, it closes." "Yes." "If you mark something unsafe, it closes." "Yes." "No plants." That feels overly broad. Near structural damage. Reasonable? He carried his key upstairs. Ruth's plan for reopening fit on half a page. 2 guest rooms, breakfast 4 mornings a week, no dinners, no whole house groups, no West Hall. Nora would keep diner shifts, but take the night before arrivals off. Every repair would be logged. Every room would be inspected by someone other than the person who fixed it. "This is barely an inn," Nora said. "It's 2 rooms more than you had," Ruth replied. The hospital coordinator accepted photographs of the rebuilt staircase, Peter's electrical report, and a brief safety inspection from the insurance agent. The reservation remained. On the morning the 2 recruits were due, Nora did not move a fern or cover a stain. She placed a printed card in each room listing the sections of Bellwether that remained closed. At 4, 2 tired women arrived carrying garment bags and questions about the hospital. Nora gave them room keys, showed them the stairs, and pointed openly toward the locked West Hall. "That side is under repair," she said. "Please don't enter it." One of them glanced at the fresh wood beneath her feet. "These the famous stairs?" Nora felt heat reach her face. "Yes." "They look sturdy." They are now. That evening, both guests came down for coffee. Ben worked quietly on the porch. Ruth left at 6 because her paid hours were finished. Nothing collapsed, sparked, leaked, or needed to be hidden. It was the least dramatic night Bellwether had given Nora. She considered it their first success. The hospital recruit slept until noon, came downstairs in socks, and asked whether breakfast was still available. Nora looked at the clock. Ruth looked at Nora. The printed card in each room said breakfast ended at 10. June's ledger said night shift, feed when awake. "I can make eggs," Nora said. Ruth took the skillet from beneath the counter. "I can make eggs. You burned the test batch." That was the stove. The stove was present. They served scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee at 12:30. One woman ate at the dining table while reviewing interview notes. The other stood at the front window watching Ben paint the repaired veranda rail. "Does he come with the room?" she asked. "No," Nora said. Ben called through the open window. "Thank you. I meant as maintenance," the woman replied, less flattering. At checkout, both completed Nora's feedback card. The first wrote, "Very quiet." The second wrote, "Breakfast hours are fictional, but appreciated. The hospital booked 6 additional nights over the next 2 months." Bellwether did not come back to life in one grand reopening. It returned in keys removed from cubbies. Room 1 went to Tall Paul, who had to duck beneath the brass bell at either sign, and complained that June used to warn him. He arrived carrying a loaf of sourdough and a paper bag containing his own preferred coffee. "You sell breakfast and bring coffee?" Nora asked. "I've had your coffee. You've never had my coffee." "I've read the comments." He slept badly the first night because the mattress was too firm, then admitted his back hurt less in the morning. He ate sausage after insisting for 12 years that he hated it. Room 2 went to an accountant attending a lake association meeting. Room 1 went to a woman taking a weekend bird count, then to a respiratory therapist who wanted somewhere other than the highway motel. After Ben's 6 weeks ended, Room 3 returned to the keyboard and earned enough in its first month to pay for the new mattresses in the other 2. Nora worked at the diner 4 evenings a week, reduced to 3 when the hospital bookings increased, then added a Sunday morning when the roof fund fell behind. The arithmetic never stayed solved for long. She kept 3 lists now. Safe remained taped inside the front desk. Today lived beside the coffee pot. Later occupied an entire notebook and had learned to reproduce. The roof fund grew by $30, then lost $28 to a leaking sink. It gained a deposit and surrendered it to an insurance installment. Every time Nora believed she could schedule permanent roof work, the inn developed a new noise. Ben taught her to identify the expensive ones. "This is a cheap noise," he said one morning as the dishwasher rattled. "How can you tell? It still works." He had moved into a small rental near Bent Pine Road after finishing the cottage. Nora offered him one final free week at Bellwether while he waited for the lease to begin. He refused. "I'm not working here now. You don't have to earn every night." "That sounds familiar." She understood before he said more. "You could pay the employee rate. You don't have employees besides Ruth." "Friend rate? Dangerous category. Full price with a discount nobody mentions? That's just a price." He stayed 3 nights and paid it. Before leaving, he fixed the kitchen drawer that hit his knee. His invoice listed the repair at $0 under personal survival. Nora paid him $5. Tessa's first photography workshop used the dining room on a Saturday in June. 8 adults arrived with cameras, notebooks, and the unnerving habit of crouching to photograph things Nora had not cleaned. One woman spent 10 minutes taking pictures of a rusted hinge. "I can replace that," Nora whispered. Tessa lowered her camera. "Do not improve my workshop." The group paid for lunch and rented 2 guest rooms. Ruth served cold chicken salad and biscuits on June's mismatched plates. Nora hovered until Ruth handed her a basket of napkins and told her to sit down. At the end, Tessa projected the day's photographs onto the dining room wall. Bellwether appeared in fragments: a brass key, cracked paint, lavender on white cotton, sunlight across the pale new stair treads, Ben's repaired railing casting long shadows. Nora appeared in one image without knowing it. She stood behind the front desk with her head bent over the reservation book, one hand holding the telephone and the other pressing hair behind her ear. She looked tired. She also looked as if she belonged there. Tessa sat beside her in the darkened room. "Can I use that one on the page?" she asked. Nora almost said no. "Yes." Tessa touched her shoulder once. The communal suppers began by accident. A storm canceled the final evening of the lake festival, leaving 4 guests wet, hungry, and unwilling to drive. Marcy's diner had closed early after the power flickered. Nora had a pot of vegetable soup, half a ham, and enough bread if everyone accepted unusually shaped slices. She rang June's bell in the lobby. The guests came down. Ben was there measuring the west hallway windows. Tessa was editing photographs at the dining table. Ruth had finished her paid hours but was waiting for the rain to ease. "What's the bell policy?" Ben asked. "Food or fire?" "Which one?" "Food." They sat together at one long table. The bird count woman argued with tall Paul about whether a heron seen from a moving car belonged on the official list. Tessa told the accountant that his photographs were crooked. Ruth ate 2 bowls of soup while claiming she had stayed only because the roads were dangerous. Afterward, a guest left $20 beneath her bowl. The next month, Nora posted 6 seats for a Friday supper. Marcy bought one. Mr. Talbot bought another and brought a clock he had repaired from the auction box. 3 seats went to people Nora barely knew. The 6th remained empty until Meredith arrived 10 minutes late, wearing office clothes and a guarded expression. "I saw the page," she said. Nora looked at the place setting. "You reserved under M's Bell. I am Monsieur Bell. So is Marcy Bellamy if she abbreviates aggressively." Meredith glanced toward the table, where Mr. Talbot was explaining clock oil to Tessa. "I can leave. You paid. That isn't an invitation." Nora pulled out the empty chair. Sit down. Meredith sat beside Ruth, who served her pot roast without remark. For the first 20 minutes, she spoke only when asked. Then Mr. Talbot told a story about June removing a bat from room 6 with a tennis racket and a laundry basket. She called Dad, Meredith said. She called everybody, Mr. Talbot replied. Your father brought a fishing net. He wore motorcycle gloves. Nora stared at her sister. Dad owned motorcycle gloves? He borrowed Cole's. The bat was the size of a dinner plate. It was the size of a lemon, Ruth said. Meredith smiled into her water glass. After supper, she helped Nora carry plates to the kitchen. The tea service is plated, Meredith said. Nora set a stack beside the sink. The English heirloom? Cincinnati, 1987. Receipt was in the box. I could have told you that. I didn't ask. No, you didn't. Meredith turned on the tap. An antique dealer offered me $80. You paid $600. I know. Nora handed her a dish towel. Do you want me to pretend that's not funny? No. I'm trying to practice humiliation in controlled doses. They washed dishes in cautious peace. Cole's woodland deal lasted 3 months. The builder did not reject it because of bellwether alone. The upper entrance required expensive drainage, the slope limited construction, and the market for luxury lake houses had cooled. Cole told Nora this at the diner while cutting a piece of lemon pie into increasingly small sections. They offered me 60% of what I paid, he said. Are you taking it? No. What will you do with 16 acres? Grow trees, apparently. They're good at that. I've noticed. He pushed the pie plate away. Dad thinks the auction was a disaster. He got the main house. He wanted a clean sale. Meredith overpaid, I overpaid. And you acquired a public relations project. It has 3 guest rooms. It has an online following. 4,000 people, most of whom enjoy watching water enter your building. Engagement is engagement. Cole laughed, then became serious. He watches the page. Dad? He complains about it every time you post, which means he sees it before I do. Nora poured him more coffee. Has he asked about me? No. The answer was honest. She wished she had not asked. By August, Bellwether's 3 rooms were occupied more nights than they were empty. Profit remained a generous word. After wages, food, utilities, insurance, debt to Ben, and the roof fund, Nora paid herself enough to stop taking Sunday diner shifts and not enough to replace her shoes. Ruth called it modestly solvent. Nora called it breathing. They reopened the west dining room windows after Ben replaced the damaged frames. Room 6 passed inspection, but remained closed until Nora could afford a mattress. Room 5 needed plumbing. Room 7 remained beneath the worst roof damage, stripped to studs in one corner, its door locked. Instead of resenting the closed doors, Nora began to appreciate them. They kept her from confusing capacity with success. On Thursday mornings, she sat at the front desk before anyone woke and returned calls. The hour had once belonged to June. Nora still reached for her phone some weeks expecting it to ring. Grant never called. In October, Meredith reserved a seat at the monthly supper without disguising her name. Cole came too, bringing 2 bottles of wine and no explanation. Grant did not. The 3 siblings sat at the end of the table after the other guests left. The conversation circled him without landing. He says you've made Grandma into a brand, Meredith said. Nora folded a napkin. What do you think? I think she would hate the page. She'd read every comment, Cole said. She'd correct the grammar, Nora added. Meredith smiled. And tell everyone you worked in New York. The brass bell sat on the sideboard beside Mr. Talbot's repaired clock. Its ticking filled the pause. March will be a year, Nora said. Neither sibling needed her to explain. I want to have a memorial supper, she continued. Not a fundraiser, not a restoration event. Just people who knew her. Cole nodded. Meredith looked toward the empty chair at the head of the table. Will you invite Dad? Nora ran her thumb along the worn wood of June's bell handle. Yes, she said. Outside, the first cold rain of autumn began striking the roof. Upstairs, the tarp held. The cold rain found a new leak over the pantry. Nora discovered it when a drop landed in a jar of flour. She stood on a chair, touched the damp ceiling, and felt the familiar instinct arrive. Move the flour, wipe the spot, get through breakfast. Instead, she took a photograph, closed the pantry, and called Ben. He arrived before noon with a moisture meter and no patience for optimism. The tarp shifted along the chimney, he said after checking the attic. Water's traveling down the rafter. Can you move it back? Yes. How long will that last? Until it shifts again. Nora looked through the kitchen doorway. 2 utility supervisors were eating eggs in the dining room. Their crew had booked all 3 open guest rooms for 11 nights, exactly the kind of winter business June's calendar had promised. I have people here. They can finish breakfast. I mean staying. I know what guests are. Can you fix it without closing? The pantry closes. Kitchen stays open if the ceiling remains stable. I'll know when I get up there. She waited for him to ask whether she wanted the reassuring version. He did not offer one. Nora went into the dining room and told the supervisors that part of the kitchen had been closed because of a leak. Breakfast would continue, but dinner service, something Bellwether did not technically offer anyway, was unavailable. One of the men looked at his eggs. Are these safe? They were cooked before the leak. Then I'm emotionally prepared. The repair took 2 hours. Ben reset the tarp, sealed the chimney edge temporarily, and came down wet to the knees. Nora posted the update before Tessa asked. Water entered above the pantry this morning. No guest rooms were affected. The pantry is closed while we dry and inspect the ceiling. Temporary roof repair held. Permanent roof work is now scheduled for November. Then she called the roofing company whose estimate she had kept folded inside the later notebook. The deposit took almost all of Bellwether's roof fund. The balance would require 6 months of payments and every utility booking she could secure. Nora signed the agreement without pretending she liked it. The permanent roof went on beneath a hard white sky. For 4 days, the inn sounded as if hundreds of determined woodpeckers had joined a labor union. Guests received earplugs and a reduced rate. Ruth closed breakfast early. Tessa photographed stripped boards, stacked shingles, and Nora standing on the lawn in June's red cardigan, staring upward. Ben caught her watching the crew. You want to climb the ladder, he said. I want to see. You want to supervise. They're removing my roof. They'll put another one back. What if they find something? They did. Rot around the chimney in West Valley. Anything else? If there is, they'll tell us. Us. The word was small enough that Nora could have ignored it. She did not. You don't have to stay, she said. I know. He stood beside her until the crew covered the exposed section. The final invoice hurt. The silence during the first rain did not. Nora lay awake in room 4 listening for drips that never came. At 1 in the morning, she walked the west hall with a flashlight and checked every bowl, pot, and stain. Dry. She opened room 7 and aimed the light at the patched ceiling. New lumber showed between old lath. The room remained stripped and cold, but the air smelled like wood instead of mildew. She sat on the bare floor. For the first time since the auction, Bellwether did not require her to catch water. She cried so quietly that even the house could pretend not to notice. The utility crews returned twice that winter. The hospital used room 1 for traveling nurses, sometimes for a week, sometimes for a single night between contracts. Nora learned which breakfast foods survived irregular schedules, and which guests wanted conversation only after their second cup of coffee. The supper table filled on the first Friday of each month. A recently retired accountant reserved the end seat every time. Marcy came after closing the diner and complained about Nora's gravy while eating all of it. Ben arrived late with sawdust on his jacket. Tessa began bringing one photograph from the previous month, which she propped on the sideboard beside the bell. Bellwether's value became visible in receipts too small to impress Grant. $82 for a room, $15 for supper, a workshop deposit, 4 packed breakfasts for utility workers leaving before dawn. Nora entered each amount in the accounting software Marcy insisted she use, paid Ruth every Friday, paid Ben's remaining lost wages by January, and transferred whatever survived into a repair account. When room 6 reopened after fresh plaster and a new mattress, Ruth placed lavender on the pillow. 4 rooms, Nora said. 3 guest rooms and yours. I could move into 7 when it's finished. You could also sleep in the pantry. The pantry has new plaster. The answer is no. Nora kept room 4. She had stopped thinking of it as temporary. The memorial invitation remained in the top drawer of the front desk. Nora wrote it on thick cream paper in November. Dad, we're having supper at Bellwether on March 14th to remember Grandma. 6 o'clock. People who knew her will be there. You can come if you want to remember her with us. Nora. She sealed it, wrote Grant's address, and added a stamp. Then she did not mail it. Every Thursday morning, she saw the envelope beneath the rubber bands and correction fluid. Sometimes she imagined carrying it to the mailbox. Sometimes she imagined tearing it in half. Both actions felt like giving Grant too much authority over the hour. Meredith asked in January whether he had responded. I haven't sent it. You said you'd invite him. I thought I would. Why didn't you? Nora was folding supper napkins at the dining table. Because I don't want him to arrive believing dinner means everything is forgiven. You could tell him it doesn't. I have told him things before, and then you're angry he doesn't call. I can want him to call without inviting him to a memorial supper. Meredith pressed a crease into a napkin, sharper than necessary. He thinks you hate him. He called me his former daughter. He was angry. So was I. I didn't erase his relationship to me. Meredith placed the folded napkin on the stack. You think because you name every ugly thing, you're the only honest person in the family. No. I think naming ugly things is how we stop pretending they're furniture. That sounds like something Tessa wrote for the page. It's mine. I don't know what's yours anymore. The sentence stung because Meredith looked frightened when she said it. Nora sat across from her. What do you want me to do? I want one meal where nobody has to earn the chair. That's what the monthly supper is, not for Dad. Dad never reserved. He's still our father. He stopped being mine. He said that. You didn't believe him then. Nora looked down at the cream envelope waiting in the drawer she could not see from the table. No, she said. I didn't. Meredith left without finishing the napkins. Cole was less subtle. Just invite him, he said 2 days later, standing in the lobby with melted snow darkening his boots. Meredith sent you. She expressed feelings. I panicked and came here. You're 35. Feelings remain dangerous. Nora handed him a rag for the floor. Cole wiped his footprints. If he doesn't come, that's on him. And if he does come and turns it into an argument, then Marcy will hit him with a serving spoon. I'm serious. So am I. She keeps one in her purse. Nora took the rag. Cole leaned against the front desk. The auction made him look cruel. He was cruel. He thinks everything after that is you proving it. This inn is not about him every day. I know, he doesn't. Then he can learn from a distance. Cole looked toward the brass bell. Grandma would want him there. Grandma wanted everybody everywhere. That was part of the problem. You don't know that. I know she lied about being full and kept the dining room heated for people who might return. That isn't the same. It's close enough that I'm allowed to be careful. Cole sighed. Fine, fine. No. But I already achieved emotional adulthood once. I'm tired. He left behind a cardboard box containing 12 bottles of wine for the supper. Nora never mailed the invitation. She did call Grant on the first Thursday in March. His number remained in her phone beneath Dad, though she had changed it twice and changed it back. The call rang 4 times before going to voicemail. She had rehearsed 3 sentences. At the tone, none survived. We're having a memorial supper for Grandma on the 14th, she said. I don't know if Meredith or Cole told you. I'm not asking you to come. I just didn't want you to hear about it afterward and think I was hiding it. That sounded like an invitation disguised as punishment. She closed her eyes. I haven't figured out what I want from you, she continued. Maybe that's the honest part. You don't have to call back. He did not. The anniversary approached through ordinary work. Tessa printed photographs of June that guests and townspeople had sent. Mr. Talbot repaired the second of his auction clocks and offered it for the dining room. Ruth planned a menu from June's recipes, but removed the canned asparagus salad. She loved it, Nora objected. She was wrong. Marcy volunteered pies, then invoiced Bellwether for ingredients because Ruth had spoken to her about accounting categories. Lila reserved room 1. Tall Paul took room 2 and promised not to bring coffee. Meredith booked room 6. Cole refused a room because he lived 20 minutes away and considered 20 minutes practically on site. Ben sanded the veranda tables and would not let Nora pay him until she agreed to list the hours against spring carpentry work. Their arrangement had become a ledger of labor, meals, money, and favors, named carefully enough that neither had to pretend usefulness was love. The night before the supper, Nora and Tessa hung photographs along the dining room wall. June at the stove, looking suspicious of the camera. June on the veranda in her pink sweater. June laughing beside the lake, one hand resting on Grant's arm. In that photograph, Grant was looking at his mother instead of the lens. Nora stood beneath it. He loved her, she said. Tessa drove a small brass hook into the picture rail. Yes. He still hurt her. Yes. Both can be true, I'm told. Nora smiled. At the front desk, she took the cream envelope from the drawer. The stamp had curled at one corner. She opened it and read the invitation again. Then she tore it once through the middle. She did not tear it because Grant was permanently barred. She tore it because the words had been written by a version of Nora who believed she had to decide the whole future before setting the table. The memorial supper began at 6 on Saturday. 22 adults filled the dining room. Former guests sat beside townspeople who had stopped bidding at the auction. Ruth took the chair nearest the kitchen. Tessa sat beside Marcy. Ben wore a clean blue shirt and looked uncomfortable without sawdust. Meredith and Cole left one place empty between them without discussing it. Nora rang the brass bell. Conversation quieted. She welcomed everyone, thanked them for bringing photographs and stories, and tried to say June's name without her voice breaking. It broke anyway. Mr. Talbot rescued her by announcing that June had once charged him for a towel he never stole. You did steal it, Ruth said. I borrowed it for 9 years. Laughter moved around the table. Nora carried out the first platter. At 7:20, headlights crossed the dining room wall. A car stopped in front of the inn. Meredith set down her fork. Cole looked toward the lobby. Nobody had to ask. Grant Bell stood alone on the repaired veranda, one hand raised to knock. Nora reached the lobby before he knocked. Through the glass, Grant looked older than he had at the auction, not diminished exactly. He stood with the rigid patience of a man who had driven somewhere while arguing with himself and had not yet decided who won. Nora opened the door. Neither spoke. Warm air moved past her into the cold. Behind them, silverware touched plates, followed by the low murmur of 22 adults trying not to listen. Grant looked through the lobby toward the dining room. I heard about the supper. It was on the page. I don't follow the page. Cole says you see posts before he does. He doesn't know what I follow. Nora waited. Grant had dressed for dinner in a white shirt and dark jacket, but he wore work boots. Mud clung to the soles. He looked down at them, as if noticing too late. You said you weren't asking me to come, he said. I wasn't, and you didn't tell me not to. No. His eyes lifted. Are you going to? A year earlier, Nora might have chosen one of the two clean answers. Yes, leave. No, come in. Everything can be repaired if we all behave long enough. The inn had taught her to distrust clean answers. You can eat, she said. That doesn't mean we're all right. I didn't ask you to say we were. You expected me to throw you out. His mouth tightened. That would be simpler for you, she said. For me? You could leave angry. Tell yourself you tried. Grant glanced toward the dining room again. Is that what this is? Another public lesson? It's supper. Half the people who stopped bidding against you are sitting in there. They knew Grandma. They knew what Ruth told them. Nora felt anger gather, fast and familiar. She stepped aside anyway. Your place is at the end, she said. Grant wiped his boots with unnecessary force and entered. The conversations quieted when he crossed the lobby. Meredith watched him approach without surprise. Cole did not. The empty chair between them had been moved to the far end of the table near the veranda windows, either because Ruth needed more room for platters or because someone had decided an empty family chair was too obvious. Nora could not tell which. Grant stopped behind it. Mr. Talbot lifted his water glass. Grant. Walter. Nobody had called Mr. Talbot Walter all evening. Ruth brought a clean plate from the kitchen and set it before Grant. Her face offered neither welcome nor rejection. Pot roast is still warm, she said. I'm not hungry. Then it will remain warm without you. She returned to the kitchen. Grant sat. The table slowly restarted around him. At first, conversation traveled in short, careful bursts. Lila asked Tessa about a photograph. Marcy offered Tall Paul more potatoes. He accepted after claiming the serving spoon was too small for his hands. Nora carried the pot roast to Grant. He put one hand over his plate. I said I wasn't hungry. I heard you. She served him anyway. June would have filled the plate twice, Nora said. She would have given me the end piece because she knew I hated it. I gave you the end piece. He looked down. I can change it, she said. No. Grant ate. Mr. Talbot resumed the story about the possum in the pantry. He claimed June had chased it with a broom while Grant opened the back door. She did not chase it, Grant said. Every face turned toward him. Mr. Talbot raised his eyebrows. "You were there? You called me. I called everybody. You called me at 12:15 and said it was a wild animal emergency." Mom stood on a chair banging two stock pot lids while the possum sat behind the flour bin. Ruth spoke from the kitchen doorway. She thought the noise would make it leave. "It made me want to leave," Grant said. A laugh escaped Cole. Meredith covered hers with her napkin. Grant looked startled by the sound, as if he had not intended to be funny. "What happened?" Tessa asked. "I put on motorcycle gloves and opened the outside door. Then I moved the flour bin." "The possum ran out?" Tall Paul said. "It climbed my leg. The whole table broke." Grant's shoulders lowered a fraction. "Mom hit me with the broom." "She thought she was helping," Ruth said. "She always thought she was helping." The words could have turned. Nora felt them reach the familiar edge. Then Grant looked at June's photograph on the wall, the one with her hand resting on his arm. "She laughed until she couldn't breathe," he said. "Then she made me patch the hole behind the flour bin." The story belonged to him. Nora had not known it. She let him keep it whole. For the next hour, June emerged in contradictions around the table, generous and intrusive, funny and exhausting. She overcharged Mr. Talbot for a towel and undercharged Ben for a room. She remembered Lila's night schedule but forgot where she put her own glasses. She served 6 kinds of jam and refused to buy decent coffee. She lied about Nora working in New York and once told a guest Cole was a professional tree surgeon because he had trimmed one maple. "I fell out of it," Cole said. "You were 22, Meredith replied. "I was concussed. You landed in hydrangeas. They were very firm hydrangeas." Nora cleared plates while people talked. She did not watch Grant constantly, though she always knew where he was. He finished the end piece. He ate the potatoes. When Ruth passed the asparagus-free salad, he glanced at her. "You didn't make the canned one." "No," Ruth said. "Good. That is the only subject on which this table is united." After dessert, guests began leaving in pairs and small groups. Each stopped in the lobby beneath the repaired sign, put on a coat, and found some reason to touch Nora's shoulder or squeeze her hand. Tall Paul carried his own suitcase upstairs without incident. Lila stood beside the new treads. Better. I had help. Also better. Mr. Talbot left last among the townspeople. He paused in front of Grant, hat in hand. "I wasn't trying to humiliate you at the auction," he said. Grant looked at him. "You rang a bell. The bell was for Nora. That's the same thing?" "No." Mr. Talbot put on his hat. "That's what you never understood." He walked out before Grant could answer. Marcy loaded empty pie plates into her car. Ruth found reasons to wash a counter that was already clean. Tessa packed photographs into a flat box. Ben carried folding chairs toward the west storage room one at a time, though he could easily have stacked them. Meredith and Cole remained at the table. Grant stood. "I should go." Nora set June's bell beside the repaired clock. "You haven't said why you came." He buttoned his jacket. "Your message. I said I wasn't asking you. I heard that part. Then why?" His gaze moved across the room. The photographs, the full sink, the chairs Ben had not yet carried away, the dining tables Nora had bought for $75 while nobody else raised a card. "To see what you'd done," he said. "Does it look like a public relations project?" "No." Meredith pushed back her chair. "Maybe we should leave you two." Grant's head turned. "Sit down." She stiffened. Nora said, "She can decide." Meredith looked between them, then sat again. Cole remained where he was, forearms on the table. Grant stared at Nora. "You've built an audience around every mistake I made. The page is about the inn. It began at the auction. It began when I bought the inn. Because I bid against you." "You did." And everyone stopped. "Yes. They wanted me to look cruel. They wanted you to stop being cruel." The distinction entered the room like cold air. Grant pulled out the chair again, but did not sit. "You had $800. I know. You had no idea what that building cost. You'd never seen the books. You hadn't inspected it. You walked in and raised your card because your grandmother asked you to open a window. She asked me to keep the place breathing. She asked everybody for everything. Then you could have stopped at 900. Grant's hand tightened on the chair back. "There," he said. "That's what you wanted. You wanted to make me say I did it to hurt you. Did you? I was stopping you. No. You told yourself that afterward. Grant looked toward his other two children. Meredith did not rescue him. Cole stared at the wood grain. Nora continued, quieter now. You knew I had 800. You knew I'd borrowed against my truck. At 900, I was already past safe. You bid 1,000 anyway. You had spent 3 years telling anyone who listened that I abandoned my mother. I told you. You told Ruth. Ruth told everybody. Did you? Grant's face went red. Did you abandon her? Nora asked. I was there. That isn't the whole question. I fixed every pipe in this place. I replaced the roof twice. I did her taxes, paid bills she hid from me, drove here every time she called. You got to love Bellwether over the telephone. You packed my clothes in trash bags. After you accused me of stealing from her, you were trying to sell her home while she wanted to stay. She was sick. The inn was failing. I was tired. The last sentence broke loose differently, not louder, truer. Grant sat down. I was tired of this building being the measure of whether I loved her, he said. Every repair meant I loved her. Every time I told her no, you looked at me as if I wanted her dead. I never thought that. You didn't have to say it. Nora thought of the auction, of all the ways a person could turn silence into certainty. I thought you wanted her life made convenient, she said. I wanted one problem I could finish. Grant rubbed both hands over his face. Meredith looked down. Cole's jaw shifted. Nora pulled out the chair opposite him. Why didn't you call me when she asked? Grant lowered his hands. Ruth stopped washing the counter. He looked older then, not softer, simply without the posture that held his version in place. She woke Wednesday afternoon and asked for you, he said. Ruth was there. Mom thought it was Thursday. I know. I told her you were coming because she was upset. Why didn't you call? I thought she'd fall asleep. That's not an answer. No. He looked toward the windows. Calling meant bringing you back into the room. The cruelty of it was so plain that Nora almost preferred an excuse. Grant swallowed. I told myself you would make it about the inn, that you'd say I had waited too long to get help, or moved her too late, or not moved her soon enough. I told myself she needed quiet, so you lied to her. Yes. And she waited. Yes. And after she died, I had to call you and explain why you hadn't been there. You didn't want to. No. The clock beside the bell ticked. Nora's voice shook. So you let me miss the funeral too. Yes. Grant did not ask her to understand. That was the only mercy in it. Meredith began to cry without sound. Cole leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Grant looked at Nora. At the auction, when you raised that card, I knew what everyone saw. They saw the granddaughter who still cared, and the son selling everything. You were selling everything. I know. The admission came rough. I kept bidding because I wanted you to fail in front of them, he said. I wanted the building to beat you before you could make it work and prove I had abandoned the part of her life that mattered. There it was. Not an apology. Not yet. An ugly truth placed on the table without decoration. Grant's eyes moved to the photographs, the clean plates, the room keys behind the desk. I was wrong about the inn, he said. Nora felt something close inside her. This is not where you apologize to a building. He met her gaze. I was wrong about you. Say what you did. I kept you from her. And I punished you because she listened to you when she wouldn't listen to me. And he closed his eyes briefly. I made her last days smaller because I couldn't stand being wrong. Nora waited for forgiveness to arrive. It did not. Grief arrived, anger remained. Love, humiliating and stubborn, sat beneath both. You can't come here and confess once and call us repaired, she said. I know. You don't get to speak about Grandma as land, bills, and pipes because those were the parts that exhausted you. Grant nodded. And you don't get to speak about me as betrayal because I named what you were doing. He nodded again. If you come back, you come as a guest. You call first. You pay Ruth if you make her work, Ruth said. Especially then. A faint breath of laughter moved through the room and vanished. Grant stood. I don't know what to say to you after tonight. Thursday morning, Nora said. 9 o'clock. That hour is open. He knew whose hour it had been. I may not answer the first time, she added. That seems fair. It isn't forgiveness, I know. Grant left alone. Meredith and Cole remained long enough to help clear the table. Neither tried to turn the confession into a family beginning. They washed plates, dried glasses, and carried leftovers into the kitchen. When the last car had gone, Nora stood on the veranda. The roofline was straight above her. Warm light filled the lobby. From upstairs came the muffled movement of paying guests settling into rooms June had kept ready long after she should have stopped. Nora lifted the brass bell. She rang it once. Ruth answered from the kitchen. "Counter's done." Tessa called from the dining room. "Photographs are packed." From the West Hall, Ben said. "Chairs are put away." Nora held the bell against her chest. Behind her, bellwether breathed through open windows. Then she went inside and closed the door against the cold.